Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I am your host, John Webster, and with me, returning, is Amy Blackfyre. And we are
Hey,
otherwise known
John.
as
Thank you so much for having me.
no problem, two members of the Knights of Keira, as we're known. And we're going to talk about the 2008 film The Duchess tonight, starring, of course, Keira Knightley. So, how are you doing, Amy?
I'm doing good. I'm ready here to indulge each other in our mutual love of Keira Knightley. It's the best thing about our friendship. I mean, there are great things about our friendship, but this is like being in the Knights of Keira is quite an honor for me. Our third Knight of Keira of the OG three, we have more now, but is Jared, and he was on the 3-hour, but good 3-hour live stream we did, which was we picked about 7 or 8 of Keira's movies. So today it'll just be one. So. We're really excited to bring the KOK back for your listening and viewing pleasure.
Yeah, anybody who hasn't seen that, go ahead and check it out. It's great. It's the three of us, and we were going through lots of Keira's movies, and we covered a lot of ground. And also, a little further back, Jared and I did a review of my personal favorite Keira movie, which was Pride and Prejudice. However, today we're talking about Amy's favorite Keira movie. And just go ahead and say, why is this one your favorite, Amy?
That's a good way to start off. Okay, so first of all, she's the queen of period dramas. So just like your favorite movie of hers is a period drama, mine is too, right? The costume dramas, the beautiful dresses, the costuming, and I'm going to say it, so go ahead and get ready. I love that feminist analysis, and this movie encapsulates the patriarchy and its control over women perfectly. Through controlling their children, right? By owning the wife and owning her children so that if she leaves or does some kind of transgression, he can take the children away. By owning everything financially, right? She has nothing of her own. And also the relationship between Bess and Georgiana, Keira's character, is really, it's hard. It's hard. Each time I see it, I feel a little bit differently. I don't hate either one. I don't blame either one. I actually really feel for both of them, but it really shows two women trapped in this really controlling system, and they don't have any way around it. And I think really also on top of that, which, I love the feminist analysis and all of that, just Keira's in the scenes. Keira just gives it her all in this movie. Not saying she phones in any movies. She kills every movie she's in. But this one, I really think that, kind of like with, I would say like with Anna Karenina, I felt like she really put herself in the shoes of a woman back in that time. And I think that's what makes her the queen of period dramas. It feels like it's that time. She makes it really come alive.
Yeah, this is my favorite performance of hers. And I think that, especially for so early on in her career, her performance was really raw in this film. I don't want to delve into it yet because we are going to get to it, but there's a scene we were just talking about before we started where she just unleashes on her husband, played by Ralph Fiennes. And I just remember sitting in the theater and getting chills. And it's still probably my favorite scene of hers that she's ever done. And it's funny because I have heard her say that she wasn't very confident in this film from an acting standpoint because she was still, like I said, it was early in her career, and I think she also said she was watching Ralph Fiennes do his thing, and she realized that she hadn't developed all those skills yet that he was bringing, but you never know it because she's just so powerful in this. So I think maybe she's a little hard on herself in that regard, but I think she definitely turned in a magnificent performance in this.
Yeah, and not just the acting, but it's the lines themselves. I mean, of course, the way they're delivered is wonderful, but the writing is just, superb. What they have the Duke say, what she says, I don't think there's a single syllable that is wasted in this movie. The script is so tight. And there's a lot of kind of circular things, right? Of where, in the very beginning, the first scene, she's in a white dress, she's running around, she kind of has this youthful, innocence to her. And then at the very end of the movie, after all this terrible stuff has happened to her, then she sees her children playing around and being free like that, right? So we really see her in this first scene, just so free, so happy. And she's with all of her girlfriends, and then they have some guys there, and they're like betting on the guys and running a race. And it was really just the opening scene for me immersed me right away. And I thought, I want to know this woman. You know, I feel like she has something interesting going on. And immediately after that scene, we find out she's to be betrothed to this man, the Duke, right? Is it Devonshire?
Yes,
I think so. And so that's what I call, and what in film critic they call it's also in literary analysis, the loss of innocence, right? The loss of childhood, right? That's when she officially is betrothed in the old days, and sometimes and still now, when a woman is, you know, considered to be married off, that's when she's like a woman, you know. And so we really go through her life and her relationship with this man who is, surprise, an asshole. And he's, what's interesting is that there will be scenes where he seems a little self-aware and like he knows what he's doing is terrible, but it's like he just doesn't care, or that he thinks that this is just how it is. Men own everything and women are meant to serve and meant to, you know, not question. So, you know, one of the main sticking points, obviously, is he has copious amounts of affairs, which at the time men were allowed to do. Pretty much, it was accepted, is that, you know, you have your wife for your natural born children, and then you have sex workers and other random women to, you know, have a little fun with, basically. And it's a really disgusting way to look at how, you know, what female sexuality, because it presumes that the woman really has no agency or even any pleasure out of it, that it's very transactional. And we see that with Bess. So Bess, right, becomes Elizabeth. Let's go back to Pride and Prejudice. Becomes G's best friend, right? They are tight, and she, you know, when she loses Bess, kind of when they have trouble, she tells her husband in that wonderful scene, which we're definitely going to talk about, you know, that I've lost, you know, she was my only comfort, right? So these two women, they really show, I think, how female relationships can be so rewarding, so deep, and so just wonderful, and how that can be immediately destroyed by a man. Like, I think most of the girls in the chat know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, you've got this great girlfriend, you guys are great friends, you do everything together, and then you both like a boy, or, you know, something of boys somehow come in. And so you really see kind of Bess and G kind of walking through this difficult system together of being, right? So Bess, going back to kind of the children and innocence, right? Bess has 3 boys that her husband won't allow her to see, right? Once again, this is, so just as the Duke uses G's children, right? Bess's husband uses hers. And because of that, we have this beautiful line, which is, I have to put it at number 2 or 3 because there's just some really good lines in this movie. But whenever Bess, you know, she slept with the Duke, she slept with her friend's husband, right? And then she says, this is the only, you know, the Duke will help me to see my children. He'll fight for me and I'll get to see my children. And then, so that, yeah, that's one of the sons of her children. So the Duke does help her and she does get to see her children, right? And when Bess tells G that, hey, you know, that this is for my children, G looks at her and says, very interesting line, which is that there are limits to what you will do for your children. And then Bess looks at her and says, there are no limits whatsoever. You know, and then later we see G sacrifice so much for her children. So once again, what I love about this movie is you get these full circles coming. Yeah, I was doing, it was like Pirates and Pride and Prejudice all at the same time, plus the Duchess. Like, if you need our 3-hour stream about her for all those. But yeah, but I think that like the cycles of this movie is what I really stands out to me. You know, you have this G saying there are limits what you do for your children, and then she sacrifices for her children later and realizes that Bess is stuck just as much as, you know, as G is stuck. Yeah. Also, I have to just, for those that are watching that I hope most of you know, but we're playing the Patriarchy drinking game. So anytime I say, you can count this one, I guess, if you want. Anytime I say that word, take a drink of any beverage, OJ, coffee. I have a wine spritzer, and don't worry, guys, I'm prepared in case this gets crazy. So I'm ready. But yeah, so okay. That word, you drink.
So I want to, since we've gone through several of the characters, I want to break down some of the wonderful cast members who are in this besides Keira, because everybody knows we both love Keira, but Ralph Fiennes is absolutely as despicable and horrible as the Duke is. Ralph Fiennes is superb in this performance. because as you say, there's moments where we almost see like, when I say a humanity about him, it's not to say like he's, showing signs of being a decent person, but it's that, as you say, oh wait, I think it's possible we may have lost Amy. Are you guys still seeing me? And let me know if you guys still see me. I think Amy's the one frozen up, but I want to make sure. Okay, good. I'm still going. Let me send Amy a message while we're talking. But anyway, as I was saying, that it's not that the Duke is a good person per se. He's not, but there are moments where we see that he is aware of almost how horrible he's being, but he is living up to a certain, I think, what society expects someone in his position to be, or what he feels society expects him to be. Okay, Amy says she's trying to come back, so hopefully that'll be the case, so I don't have to do this entire thing by myself. That wouldn't be great. I'll take another drink just because I know that probably off camera she must be saying patriarchy. Okay, there we go.
My first technical difficulties. I've made it. I'm officially a streamer. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, my internet, I don't know what happened. The gods of the internet decided that I should be struck down. So that's what happens.
Well, I just assumed that we should blame the patriarchy, so I took another drink.
Good. And, honestly, it could have been possible that the reason that happened is I just spilled wine everywhere in my feminist rage. So that is also a possibility. And I actually, you notice I'm drinking from a solo cup because I'm a classy lady. I broke a stemmed wine glass a couple days ago, so I'm a little gun shy. So I'm just like keeping that there. But okay, I don't even remember where I was, John, so you're going to have to help me.
Well, that's because you decided to breathe for a moment and I started.
I mean, I let you talk on your own channel sometimes, John. Sometimes I allow that. I mean, here on John Webster Film, when I'm on here, it's a matriarchy. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. But no, I was talking about Ralph Fiennes' performance, and that he does have a sort of self-awareness at times that he almost wants to. There's part of him acknowledging how horrible he's being, but then he will immediately go back to being a major asshole. I think one of my favorite moments of his is in that scene that we both love, where G unleashes on him, and at first he actually goes towards her almost as if to try and reach out and almost comfort her, I guess, and then she pulls away and he immediately puts a wall back up and decides, okay, so that didn't get me anywhere. I'm just going to go full tilt into being a monster. And then he goes on that whole thing about how she hasn't fulfilled, the duties required of her as a wife.
God, yeah. It's like, and then when she does, right, when she does give him a son, he looks at her in the eye, and I swear this asshole, he goes, I too abhor this whole thing. Oh, wow. So, the guy who, okay, yeah, I'm going to say it right now. You can drink. Patriarchy hurts everyone, including men. So they are also controlled by it, but they have way much more privilege and freedom in it. So to say like, oh yes, I abhor this whole thing. It's like, dude, you're the Duke. Everyone does what you want. You can have as many affairs as you want. And yet when G has one, as opposed to like a bajillion, then she's pretty much, he won't let her see her children, and she's out of polite society, shunned. And so it's him to say, oh, I abhor the whole thing. Oh, well, then we forgive you, Duke, because you realize what you're doing is terrible. And you're going, well, this is the system we live in, which, there were, people against slavery when it was, so to say that it's like you just kind of roll with the system or whatever. And it's not that I'm a bad person. It's that the system is, you know, is making me do this, or these are the circumstances I'm in.
Yeah, I actually went back to watch.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to shout out to Steven. I did not see his comment. Patriarchy is bad for men too. Okay, all right. We're on the same wavelength. I totally agree with you, Steven, because, you know, toxic masculinity, we talk about that a lot in feminist studies, right? There's this idea you have to be manly, you have to be this way or that way. And so I know that the Duke was under a lot of pressure. He, as a man, a politician, should be into politics, but he's not, right? Society expects him, the patriarchy expects him to be this, you know, politician. I'll get a drink real quick, sorry. But expects some great politician, you know, man who stands up and is a leader of the Whig Party and is moving the country, you know, into a new era. And that's a lot of pressure if you're not actually enjoying it. And then we have Charles Grey, who is G's love interest, who is interested in politics and is passionate about it, right? So we really have this kind of what is expected of men and women. And I'm glad you put up this picture, John, because I love the political outfit that he wears and that she wears behind him, right? Whenever she wears this outfit, it's because she's the political duchess at this point, right? She's a political public figure rather than, you know, kind of the socialite figure that she is in many other scenes. Yeah.
And I really do love it. I've been able to sort of grasp onto that side of this film with repeat viewings and watching how it's a wonderful counterpoint to the Duke, where I think the way Ralph Fiennes plays the character is that he's very socially awkward, and I think that plays in a lot to sort of the way he behaves, where he's kind of aware of how he's supposed to present himself, and there's sort of this deep-seated anger that I think he has as a result of the fact that he's so uncomfortable around people. And G is the complete opposite of that, where she's able to step in front of a crowd and just win them over instantly. And she uses that ability to help out with politics and to really influence matters of the day. And that's why as much as she suffers from a personal standpoint, I really do find it inspiring that she was able to wield such power behind the scenes and really make a difference. So I don't think that the movie certainly doesn't end on a positive note for her character, but I like that she continued to be very active in public life and to sort of make differences. So even if her personal life, unfortunately, she had no control over, but I am glad that, she was able, it shows that she was able to make a difference in matters of policy.
Yeah. So did you want to start at a certain point in the movie or just keep talking about themes? Or you were also wanting to talk about people that I remember weren't Keira in this movie. I have heard there are other people in this movie other than her. Was there another one you wanted to hit on?
Yeah, well, let's go ahead. I just wanted to list off some of the actors. We also have Hayley Atwell as, oh my God, my Bess. Her friend, which is great, because what I love about going back to this film after all these years is at the time, in 2008, I saw this movie and it's like, oh, this is the actor playing this role. This is the actor playing that role. And now it's like, aside from Keira, we already had Voldemort as her husband. And now we can say the film also has Peggy Carter, Howard Stark. And it's great to see how those actors have really become well known in the years since this. And even though I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, it does kind of tickle me seeing both of those actors in this. But she really is incredible, because I think that it's interesting. You were saying that your perspective on her has kind of changed with each time you've seen this. yeah, I mean, I guess I couldn't help but be sympathetic towards her because she really is trapped in a situation where her options are limited, and she's doing what she can for her children, which of course does come back to, that play on that earlier exchange that you talked about, where G has to then make a sacrifice for her children.
Yeah, exactly. It's a question of sacrificing your happiness for your children, right? I think we do learn later that Bess did come to love the Duke, but we know for sure G coming back to the house with the Duke to be with her children was a sacrifice because being with him made her unhappy. We had a watch party in the Slack, and everybody was crapping on the Duke, and it was just, we had a field day. It was great. So Bess, so first watch, totally, completely felt sorry for her in every single aspect. And then around the second or third watch, for some reason, I was like, how dare you betray your friend like that? That's a terrible move. And then the last couple of watches, I've kind of gone in between, where it's not that I'm saying she's a total victim, and I'm not saying she's a total perpetrator of awful, betrayal, but she's a gray character, that's in between. And speaking of gray, we find out that Charles Gray, who is his love interest, that Bess helped set them up so that she can actually find some happiness being with a man. So Bess does, things for G to show that she, that she really does care about her, and that they are. And I think you were talking about the end of the movie, how it's not really a happy ending, and that's totally true. But you do have that scene, like the very end, where they have the title card saying what happened, where Bess and G look at each other and they smile. And, it's not a repaired relationship, but it's a somewhat salvaged relationship, right? They came to an understanding. And I think what's interesting is that G wanted to make a deal with the Duke, saying, okay, you sleep with Bess and I'll sleep with Charles Gray. And he said, deal, why would I make a deal? I rule it all. And she ends up basically making a deal with Bess in the end. So it turns out that, there is a deal kind of struck, but it has to be between the women, right? There is no compromise with men in this case, with this kind of husband owning you, owning all the assets, owning the children, right? There is only yielding and giving in and trying to kind of rebel in little ways where you can, right? So, for example, little ways of rebelling, right? So we have the Duke, who they're at this great Whig party, huge swanky event, very political. And they're giving all these speeches. And the second the Duke is done with his last bite, he gets up and walks out of the room. And everyone stares like they're there for the Duke. He's the major politico, right? And so G gets up and goes and talks to him. And he's like, oh, these speeches are so boring. I finished my dinner. I'm going, whatever. And then she goes back to sit down because she's, going to actually be the politician that he should be, as the Duchess. And says, oh, he needs to rest. Everything's fine. And then one of the politicians looked at G and said, I hope it wasn't because my speech, was too long. And G looks at him and goes, oh, no. In fact, the Duke said he loved it and he'd love it to be longer, right? There are these little ways that she can kind of needle at the Duke, right? Because that's really all that she has. He owns it all, right? And I think the dogs, because I am a dog lover, right? So I'm automatically, when I first saw this, I was like, the Duke's a dog lover. He's a good person. But no, he's not. He only cares about his dogs. And she says that. He doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care about anything. He only cares about his dogs. So, and shout out to the dog actors and the child actors, by the way, who are, the non-adult human actors too. I think the dogs were great in the movie. I know it's like a really random thing to say, but I really love them.
I just want to say bye, Beth. Thanks for stopping by.
Love you, Beth.
And it's God, that scene that you referenced where she tries to make it a deal, and the line that the Duke actually says is
sorry, now everyone in the chat is saying who else loved dogs that was a bad person, and now I'm laughing. I'm sorry. Keep continuing.
Well, for his initial response, it's like a smile, a curious smile on his face, and he's like, a deal. Like, you really think that I'm going to, make any deal? And then his actual response is, make a deal. Why would I? I don't make deals.
Yeah. I think I have, oh yeah, I have the exact quote. Yeah, exactly. Deal? I don't make deals. Why would I? I'm in charge of it all, right? And then Bess kind of tries to come in and says she's only asking for what we have, this arrangement we have, and she's asking for it for herself. And then he looks at her and he goes like, quiet woman, right? And it's like, whoa, yeah. So he's really reasserting that control over both of these women. And what I love is actually at the beginning of the scene when she first introduces the is about to introduce the deal, she calls the Duke our husband to Bess. And that's just another way I think of like kind of, a little bit saying like, this is real and this is our situation, right? We share this husband. So, the Duke gets to have two women and yet the Duchess can't have two men, right? And of course, a lot of this, I have to say right now, is natalist. He wants to make sure that his children are his children and that they are legitimate heirs to Devonshire. But at the same time, it's absolutely a double standard because, she should be able to find love where she can, just as he, I think, has, because he kind of hints at the end that he's not really capable of love. He says, I love in that as much as I can understand it. So this is once again, we were talking about his self-aware moments. He's self-aware that there's something wrong with him.
He's self-aware,
but he
isn't,
can't go
that moment,
far enough to fix himself.
Yeah, because that moment that you're referencing is simultaneously like infuriating and also sort of unintentionally hilarious. Because it's because G says, about Gray, and he loves me, and her mother says so does William, and he instantly goes, yes, I do. And it's the most hilarious thing in the world. And her response is,
I know.
How? He's like, in the way that I understand love.
Yes.
And
the difference in the tone too. He's monotone about it. And she goes, how? Like her voice goes up, like she incredulous, because like he's done nothing to show that he cares about her. The only thing he's done is to show that he cares about her having a son. And we have that scene where he literally hands her a check because she gave him a son. I mean, it was so transactional and there was no love there. And so to go, how? Right? And he goes, in so much as I understand, it just, wow. And you're right. You're totally right, though. The mom was originally the one that said it. William, right? It just kind of like, ooh, she's like really kicking the ball over to him. It's like, oh, Bob, no, this is not. The mom also, we can talk about her later. She's an interesting character, the dynamics.
I do want to mention her real quick. The actress's name is Charlotte Rampling, and she's been in lots of stuff. I mean, I would list off some stuff, but it's been quite a lot. She's been in things like, I know she was in Dexter. She was in another Keira Knightley film, Never Let Me Go. And she's also going to be in the upcoming Dune adaptation.
Nice.
She's a phenomenal actress, but unfortunately in this, she is kind of in the role of antagonist almost in to G's character, but what she wants is what she considers best for her daughter. Yes. But she's working from within this established framework of, again, the patriarchy. So it's so her options are also limited. So she's So, I mean, she has the kind of luxury of being outside of not having G's sort of passions and emotions of what she's going through. She's like an outsider trying to say, this is what you have to do. And unfortunately, it's rough, and it doesn't make her the most likable character for the audience.
Yeah, I hated her the first watch, and I've grown to understand her a little bit more. And I think what the mother character represents is the there's like a better term for it that I can't think of. But keeping the cycle. A lot of times, we talk about how men keep the patriarchy going, but in this case, and this mothers, grandmothers, all sorts of women at this time and now, women keep the patriarchy going as well because they impose what they think is best according to the system onto their daughters, right? Obviously I was raised feminist by my mom, so I wasn't told the things that G was. But the mom did think that at the time and with that system, that was the best thing that she could do for her daughter, was to teach her how to fit into the system, and so that she would be taken care of. Right? Exactly. Thank you. Yes, Stephen, I knew you'd be there for me. Internalized misogyny was the term I was looking for. Right? You say, okay, she's passed away, so I can say it now. My grandma, my paternal grandmother, thought men were better than women. She thought she was lesser than by being born a woman. She just did. She had 5 grandchildren. 4 of us are girls. 1 is a boy. Which one do you think's her favorite? Right? So it's internalized misogyny. You think, I'm lesser than all other women. We're too emotional. We can't lead, we're not strong and brave like men. And so the mother internalized this misogyny and thought, this is how I'm going to help my daughter, is I'm going to show her the right way. Yeah, John, don't you get too crazy over there with the OJ. And you poured a tall glass of the stuff too. I saw that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Internalized misogyny. He's always there for me. I love it.
Okay, let's take a step back for a moment, because I feel like I don't want to let the discussion go too long without periodically just stepping back and taking the time to, as everybody knows, give a big sigh to Keira in this film, because especially I say this because I wanted to reference back to something I know you want to talk about, which is in the opening of this film,
is it
her
dress?
wedding dress. Yeah.
Is it the dress? It's the dress. It's the dress. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Okay, this is the best dress in a Keira costume drama. Don't at me. Like, I love this dress so much. It is like, it's not white. It's kind of a light gold or maybe tan, and the the chest area, the way the lacing, everything about it, and absolutely with the necklace. And it kind of seems to match her bouquet as well. And it's just, the costuming in this movie is superb. I have no notes. Everything about it is perfect. And I think this wedding scene, this is the second dress we see her in. The first one is that white kind of cotton wispy dress that you would run outside in, right? And this is instead, maybe I'm bad with fabric. It looks like silk. I'm bad at things. And she has this, it's much more high dollar dress, much more fancy, ready to become a woman wed, right? And it also, unfortunately, then leads into the scene of their wedding night, their first sexual encounter, where he's cutting it off of her and becomes frustrated with it, and he says, this is actually probably my favorite exchange of the whole movie. My favorite exchange is when he's doing this, he's cutting off, he's having a hard time, he's horny, he wants to do it now, right? And he's like, oh, why do women have such complicated, things, this dresses, it's so many laces, everything. And she goes, well, you men, you have so many ways to express yourselves, and women, we have our hats and our dresses. And he kind of looks at her like he doesn't get it at all, but that is such a profound line. And it's, and it goes right over his head.
It does. And I really do love it. He's like, like, he's acknowledging that he should
whatever
understand.
Woman, like, he just wants to get to the deed. Yeah.
Yeah, he really is incapable of like understanding that. It's funny because she then the next scene is talking to her mother and and really kind of describes him to a T, where it's like he isn't interested in anything. It's like he's this complete bore of a person.
Dogs. It's true that he's so boring. I think more than anything, he's a jerk. I'll get all those things right, but number one, the problem with the Duke is he's so boring. It's just nothing about him is exceptional in any way. Everyone has something. Everyone's good at something or has a passion, and he just, other than his dogs, has nothing. And you notice that in the scene where they're going somewhere, and it's her and the kids in a carriage, and then him and his dog in another carriage. They're his kids, really, to him. It's crazy. As somebody who loves dogs, I would be like, I want to like you. That's like your one good feature, but then you're also terrible and boring. And, and G has never done anything to antagonize him is another thing. Not to say that, women deserve to be, abused by their husbands if they are mean to him or whatever. But she really didn't, other than a couple of comments here and there, she wasn't really as out of it as they show in the play that they end up going to, where Bess, they go as a throuple. I'm just going to call them a throuple for the rest of the stream. All right. The throuple goes, Bess, G, and the Duke go to this play. And we find out a little bit subtly that the play is sort of about G and the Duke. And you have G's character on stage totally telling off this husband, just not taking any of his crap and the guy looks like a buffoon, and everyone's laughing but the Duke, because the Duke doesn't find that funny, because that is a, you know, it's like a taming of the shrew kind of thing, right? It would be awful. It's shameful, and you're cursed with a wife that talks back.
I do
and then whenever she goes on to talk to Gray about the play, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do want to point out something about that scene where we actually see that you have people from, you know, the media of the day making drawings of them as they're sitting there. And then a moment earlier, same thing when she's, you know, walking into the theater. And now what I want to note about that scene is it really shows that she was that much of a sort of celebrity of her day. And so that's almost like the paparazzi taking pictures. And
totally.
So it is that same kind of dynamic where I think we think of that as a modern phenomenon. But the fact that she was kind of inspiring that type of thing back then, and also with her leading fashion as well. I love the scene where she's being introduced and she comes in with, you know, this ridiculous high, you know, headpiece with the feathers and stuff. And if you notice, nobody's wearing feathers before that scene, and then for the rest of the movie, everybody's wearing them, but she's moved on to something else.
Exactly.
Which is great.
She was the trendsetter. Yeah. And I think also about the paparazzi, what's interesting about any of the scenes where I love that one scene where she's laying in bed with Gray and they're looking at pictures of her that people like, that, you know, that are in like probably like popular magazines or something, be like, which one do you like better? You know, like she's famous, and the paparazzi and like the attention she gets isolates her further, so that when she has Bess and then in a way kind of loses Bess, she really doesn't have anything except for, you know, for her children. And then later that, unfortunately, you know, they're kind of sort of kept from her. Yes, big fans of gossip. Exactly. And so she was really the center of all of this attention, which you can tell during some scenes she's a little happy about or a little bit pleased with, because she talks to Bess. She says, "Oh, you sounds like you need us to like get everyone's attention. Like I can help with that." You know, like she understands that's how she's recognized, but it also makes it really hard for her to live her life and to find happiness, because she's constantly under the microscope.
Yeah, and I think we see it's sort of a double-edged sword where sometimes she revels in that, being able to enjoy that attention, and then other times it's overwhelming, especially in the aftermath of a very violent scene where the Duke rapes her, and then we see her falling apart. And I want to point out this scene because it's funny that we're talking about being sort of overwhelmed by the media of the day and stuff like that, and that's exactly what Keira was actually going through at this point in her career.
Yeah,
because especially during this time, she was not very popular with regards to the press, even though she was getting like Oscar nominations and stuff like that, and she was being followed around, you know, by the paparazzi and all that stuff. So she has even said that she was going through essentially a mental breakdown during this point.
Yeah.
So it's curious to see how that probably even played into her performance in this film, because it's a very similar dynamic.
And I hate to talk about the sexual assault scene because it obviously is disturbing, but I think they do something interesting with it, which continues the feminist commentary, which is you have Charlotte and the little girl who's one of the Duke's illegitimate children. And she oh, by the way, the child actress totally sells this scene. She hears, you know, that G is screaming, and, you know, because she's being attacked by the Duke. And she runs up and stops and has this look on her face, and Bess is there, and Bess takes her away. And this to me really shows this continuation of sexual violence, which is that, you know, there are two women there, well, one woman and then one little woman, right? Young kid, right? they don't feel like they could just open the door and stop it, right? It's going to keep going. And unfortunately, you know, Charlotte being an illegitimate daughter, she might, when she gets older, experience sexual violence, you know, and Bess, in a way, she's sleeping with the Duke to get her children back. How consensual is that? She's technically being raped too, at least in the beginning. And so you have this kind of females seeing at very young age. Charlotte is like 6 or 7, not really understanding, but knowing that a woman is being attacked by a man and that no one's doing anything, right? Because he's the Duke, he's her husband. And at the time, and now even in some countries, marital rape is not considered rape. So it would not be considered a sexual assault. And so that scene is really, really hard. But I think what it does is show how trapped women were. They couldn't even, you know, that kind of violence happened upon them. And, you know, they survived and they went on with their lives, and it can happen again at any point. And it was just like it is now, a constant threat. And you could do even less about it then. So it's a very hard scene. And for those of you that haven't watched the movie, watch it anyway, because it doesn't show graphically or anything. It's implied. But it is disturbing. And the movie takes a turn after that, because we see G get very depressed until she gets with Gray and is still, you know, feeling a little bit better. And if I could just say one more thing about that, is then she references the sexual violence later when he's coming, he's with her, and she goes, "What, are you going to throw me down and force me again?" And he goes, "Why would I?" She's just like, oh, that like makes me so mad. And it's because she had just had a son from the previous, you know, time. And so he's like, "Why would I rape you?"
He follows it up. Yeah, he says, "Why would I do that? I know you never thought much of me, G, but I never do anything with no purpose." And
exactly,
it's like
the purpose, right, of having the boy. Oh my God.
So why would he now? You know, it's
yeah. It's transactional. I got out of you what I need, so I don't need to, you know, to violate you again. You know, and what's weird is that the Duke isn't passionate about anything, and yet he's a horny little guy. And so it seems like the only thing he's really passionate about is just screwing everyone in England. And so he has this kind of impulse, right? And it seems like he sees it as he doesn't need to control his impulses, whereas she needs to control her impulses, wanting to be with Gray and all of this. And you also can see he's a little befuddled why she would want to cheat on him, because it could be that he, like many men at the time, and I hope not any men know now, which is that women don't get any pleasure out of it at all. And it's, you know, they just do it to have children. And so why would you seek a love affair, right? When you get, you know, a mechanical procreation sex with me, shouldn't that be enough? And so it's really interesting, the natal dynamic, right? The dynamic of children, if they're legitimate or not, if they were conceived through, you know, sexual assault. It's a lot of emotion, I think. But this movie, just as the Duke said, he doesn't do anything without a purpose. The movie does not bring up these things these themes without a purpose, right? You know, sexual assault, internalized misogyny. These are all important feminist critiques of the patriarchy. Drake.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Hold on.
That's the bad thing about the drink. I'm like, okay, now you talk while I drink. Wait.
Yeah, that he, you know, you say that he doesn't quite understand, but the thing is, I think especially towards later in the film, I think he does sort of get what it is. He understands why the two of them would be in love with each other, because he even, when she says, "We love each other," and he says, "I do not doubt it. You know, he is a dreamer like yourself, and you both dream of a world that I think he either says a better world or a world that'll never be. I don't know, but the point is he does get it, but he doesn't really care in the least bit. He's like, this is just an inconvenience to me. I get it, but no."
And the chat is having a great discussion about Lady Leaf Underhill and Anna are both talking about how the husband wouldn't have viewed it as rape, and how marriage is like, from the second you say I do, full on consent anytime he wants it, you know? And we're having a very more contemporary conversation about consent needs to be given every single time, enthusiastically, with both people who are relatively unintoxicated. Like, there's all these stipulations, but back then there weren't any of these. And so, yes, the Duke would not have viewed this as rape. He would have viewed it as a way to make sure that he was given a son. And that was his only concern. And we see the first time she is going into labor, they're at a party, and he does a toast to the 6th Duke of Devon, to my son, and then it's not a son. And then it's like, gotta try again.
Really, is that not the perfect demonstration of all of this, is the fact that he's giving a toast and everybody's cheering to, this, son, which it's not going to be a son, but, that's on the way. And meanwhile, G's screaming in the background. It's like the men toast while the women are screaming. It's,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's really quite
and
perfect.
So for him, this is a happy occasion, right? And for her, she's about to go through so much pain and then disappointment, not really necessarily for herself, because she does love her baby girl, but the Duke's disappointment, right? And then the mother comes back and goes, I promise, she'll give you a son. And he, and this, like, the mom constantly being like her daughter's like hype man, like, don't worry, she'll give you a son. It's coming, that's like such internalized misogyny of like, don't worry, like, the uteruses of all of our families have produced a son. And it's just like, oh my God, it's
I'm trying to think of what it
awkward.
is that she says. It's what she describes it as a mishap. Don't let this mishap deter you, your grace.
Yeah,
and it's like even she is calling the birth of a daughter a mishap.
Yeah, and that's that internalized misogyny. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the whole. I think that it really, a lot of it is about the relationship between the Duke and Duchess, for sure, and how unloving it is. But I think going back to her being famous, there's this great line that shows not only do they not have this good relationship, but literally everyone else loves the Duchess. How can this man not, right? Bess tells Charles Grey, the Duke must be the only man in England who is not in love with his wife. I mean, the Duchess, right? Like she was so good and the one scene, she has one scene where you can say she screwed up in public, and that's after being sexually assaulted. She got drunk and went to a party, and her wig got caught on fire. Yeah. So like, you can't blame her for that. Like, she was gonna get crunk and like forget about her life, like I'm kind of doing right now with the latest news. I kind of just want to forget about things, And so she was like, what? I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna go to this party, and then she's twirling around, and everyone's kind of like, oh, she's dancing a little erratically, and then she bumps in the chandelier, and her wig catches on fire. Probably one of the few scenes that I could consider semi-funny in this movie, because it is a very serious movie, but it's really funny at first, especially because the Duke finally goes, well, put out her Grace's hair. It's just... And that's the only time I laugh in this movie. I snicker a couple of times. Like, whenever the Duke just says something stupid, I just snicker. But this is the first time where I actually laugh. But I was a little sad because we know the reason that she was drinking so much is she's crushed and hurt and violated. So it's a weird laugh. It's almost like I just needed a comedic relief kind of thing. And I think the show, the movie writers kind of put those scenes like that for a reason.
And it's funny that you say you laugh at that, because I actually think a lot of the
sorry, Aaron just said that makes her all the more charming stars. They're just like us. I love that part. When you accidentally set your wood on fire, stars, they're just like us. I love it.
There are parts that are just funny, especially with the Duke, because eventually, like, obviously there are really horrid things that he does that are not in the least bit funny, but some of his line deliveries are just like, how can you lack that much self-awareness? And it is funny.
Oh, yes. I have done some things that you have judged to be harsh. Really? Judged to be keeping my children away from me? Raping
I really
me?
wanted...
Like, keeping me a prisoner in my own house? Yeah, harsh, Duke.
I really do want to talk about that final scene, because it's very interesting to me, and this is a bit of sort of self-reflection on me, that maybe my mind was not as open as it currently is back when this film came out. I was very much looking at a lot of the stuff with the Duke from a performance standpoint, and watching Ralph Fiennes' performance and how he sort of played out certain elements of the Duke's personality. And when I saw it, so this was like 12 years ago, I remember thinking of that scene that, this is the Duke kind of opening up, and it shows some growth on his part. And I guess to a degree it does, but now I watch that scene and I'm like, he doesn't, like, he still doesn't get it. He thinks he's, being sort of, I guess, charitable and, and turning a corner,
reasonable,
but he's
even, which is still too,
but he
still
really
too
doesn't get
word.
it. First of all, he doesn't say, I know I've acted in ways that have been horrible. He says, I know I have acted in ways that you have judged to be harsh, which is like
the classic. I'm sorry you're offended.
Yeah.
Just
and also it's the fact that
I have a couple of exes that would speak like that, and it's like, whoo, glad I don't date men like that anymore. Oh my God, no. Oh, you're sorry, I'm upset. No.
Yeah,
not how this works.
It's also the fact that he's now decided, after all the horrible things he's done, now there's going to be peace between them. Because, now that he says so, everything's going to be, better. It's such, it's so infuriating. And yet, nonetheless, I continue to be mesmerized by Ralph Fiennes' performance in that scene, because it does, even if the layers he's showing are not admirable, it's still interesting to see how he developed the character from the start of the film. Someone who really didn't care in the least bit how put out G is. And even though he's still wrong, it shows a certain he's trying, but he's just not trying hard enough,
Yeah, he's a little bit of effort, but not near enough.
Yeah, he's just still.
And I think especially after she had a son, he was kind of like, okay, I can step back on the gas a little bit. Which thanks. I mean, but you have such a good point of this idea, John, of him saying, okay, now we are moving into this phase of, let's clean slate. There will be peace between us. We're going to live in this house with Bess. We're just going to have our own routine and, figure things out. When it goes back to his line of, why would I make a deal? I control it all, right? Like, he got what he wanted in the end. He got his mistress, and his wife got in her place, and he has all his children, And what's interesting, though, I will say, speaking of his somewhat self-reflective moments, the very ending scene where you're seeing the children running around outside, and G and the Duke are there, and he, I believe, has just delivered the speech about, you've judged some of the things I've done, you've judged to be harsh. And so they're kind of done with that conversation. He goes over there and he looks at the window and he goes, wow, that's amazing to be that free. And so you're like, okay, so you do realize that you're also under control of a lot of systems. Why can't you then just take that and then project it onto your wife, who is under the control of way more control, And that's like, I always want to say, yes, absolutely, patriarchy hurts men. But it's just not comparable when you see how women,
I look at that less as he has a small change of heart in how he's going to approach things moving forward. But I think what that scene shows more than anything is it's sort of a window into his psyche, which doesn't make us sympathize more with him, but sort of it allows the audience to understand sort of, why he is the way he is, and the way he sees things and looks at things, which is good. It doesn't make him a better person, not the least bit, but I do think it was really important to show that, so that we're not just watching a two-dimensional villain for the entire film. I think what's so brilliant about the character and Ralph Fiennes' performance is that, he's horrible and we want to strangle him throughout the entire film, but nonetheless we are watching a living, breathing human who we hate, but we get why we hate. It would have been very easy, I think, to make him a cardboard cutout, and he's anything but. So I did like that.
And Stephen once again has a great comment, because we were talking about patriarchy hurting men. He says it doesn't hurt men equally, and I think Stephen, I hope I'm reading this right, which is that some men live up to kind of the masculine kind of things more than others, right? So a guy who wants to, I'm going to do a Song of Ice and Fire example. We have Samwell Tarly, right? And then we have Dickon, right? Dickon, he's like doing all the sword fighting. He's hunting with his dad, whereas Sam's at home wanting to read, right? And so there's certainly men that are, more harangued than others, called sissies and women and this kind of stuff. But I think Stephen can also mean the original thing of what I was saying, which is that the control is there, but not the same when it comes to men and women. And of course, I have to just say right now, disclaimer, we're talking about a movie that's taking place when there were only men and women. I absolutely, totally recognize there are non-binary and trans individuals out there. And sadly, this movie is not as nuanced as, say, Colette, another great Keira Knightley movie that has a lot of great trans and queer commentary. So if you're looking for that and want some Keira Knightley, I definitely recommend that. Keira does not shy away from these issues. It's just this particular movie was very focused on the binary. But I want to totally recognize that there are individuals out there who are not male nor female, or they were born one and are now the other.
Yeah, and who knows? We may find that to be the subject of a future stream. So if you guys want to check that movie out, yeah, it's obviously shocker. We both recommend it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I do want to go ahead and pause here for a moment since we're an hour in, and I just first of all want to thank you guys for coming and watching this. This is fantastic. And also to invite you to next week's stream, which Amy will be returning for. And we will also be joined by my brother, Stephen Stark. And we'll be talking about the 2002 film Hero, starring Jet Li, which Amy, you might have a little bit of interest in that.
I don't know much about China. I'm okay. So those that know me know I'm joking. Yeah, I have a blog about Chinese literature and Song of Ice and Fire, and soon to be his Dark Materials. Yeah, Hero I'm very excited for this because it takes a very interesting historical figure and does a little bit of a spin on it. Without spoilers, let me just say the main character of this film, if he would have succeeded in what he tried to do, he would have changed the course of Chinese history forever. So it's just a very interesting time in Chinese history, and they made a great, basically amazing kung fu drama out of it. I mean, it's a really good movie. So I look forward to this. I'm excited finally to talk about a Chinese movie on your channel. And I told you, if you ever do a Chinese movie, don't invite me, you disowned, come on. But yeah, is this the time where I plug myself, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't want to do that yet. So I am Amy Blackfyre. You can follow me on Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel, and I have my blog where I write my essays. Those are all in the description. So the YouTube channel is just me reading the essays for your listening pleasure. I don't do anything fancy with the videos, and I also keep my essays short, 4 to 6 pages. I know not very many Americans want to read more about Chinese literature than that. So I keep it very short. I keep it very simple. And I have lots of essays on A Song of Ice and Fire. I have one about Tyrion and the Monkey King. I just finished one on Renly's Peach and peaches in Chinese literature. And I also am working on a couple of things, which I'm very excited to tell you about, which is one, I am doing a collab essay with All Hail the Night's Queen, aka Zhou Li, a fellow dragon. She is in the chat, I believe still. She hasn't fallen asleep because she is in a very different time zone. And we are writing about the shade of the evening trees and the long night. So we're very excited about that. And after that, I'm going to drop my first His Dark Materials essay, which will be about Orientalism in Philip Pullman's series and the representation of Asian peoples. And after that, I am back at it with more Song of Ice and Fire. I'm going to write about Varys and the idea of the scheming Chinese eunuch. So that will be very fun. Love you, Jolie. Love you, big sister.
I'm still waiting on that Daenerys article.
I know you want the Dany one. I'm thinking, you know what? After the Varys essay, I'm going to say, forget it with the polls. By the way, those that follow me on Twitter, I do polls, so you can decide what's my next essay.
What?
And John, I know, I'm Amy Poehler. I know you don't know this about me. I do polls, so you can pick what's next. And I know John was always reading for the Dany essay, and it never wins. And John, I think after the Varys essay, I'm just going to go ahead and write that Dany essay and drop it. I don't want to have to keep waiting because I have some really good stuff on that. So I'm very excited for that. So John, just for you, Dany's coming after Varys, all right?
There is the most remote possibility that if another poll went up, I might just have to make like a million alternate Twitter accounts
and just vote Danny. Oh, I'm sorry, I have way too much in the works. I also have my second part of my ET series. My first part was about the Five Forts. My second part is going to be about the Bloodstone Emperor. So not much information on him, but I'm going to conjecture like hell, which I'm very good at. Lots and lots of conjecture. Who knows? Lots of guessing.
Also, I wanted to go ahead and mention, since I've finally now got a date for it, I actually, between us guys, I have to admit that I do not yet have my stream following next week lined up yet. However, the week after that, so it's a couple weeks down the line, I do want to announce that I'm finally doing a Master and Commander stream, and that will be with Lauren, Shakes of Thrones. Yeah, well, thank you for spoiling the next person, Amy. Damn it. So we have Lauren, aka Shakes of Thrones, Kelly, who was just here last week for The Terror. She'll be back. And also my good friend Laura, who was on Here Be Dragons a couple weeks ago talking with me and Steven about aliens. So it'll be the four of us.
Laura, I'm so excited to see you again on the stream, and Kelly, and Shakes of Thrones. Wow, my God, that's going to be a great stream. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, I'm just so excited because of all the movies to get a full panel for, I didn't think it would be Master and Commander, which I feel is an underappreciated gem. So I'm just really psyched about that. And it has the distinction of being like the only film from that year that I would not have been that upset if Lord of the Rings had lost the Oscar to. It's the only one I can say.
That is high praise, sir, because you and I argue about The Beautiful Mind and that I think that it deserved the award, and you vehemently disagree. Vehemently.
Yeah. Oh my God. You know what? We're going to have to let
okay, we won't get into it. We're pinning that right now because this is like a 5-hour stream.
But seriously, in the year when Fellowship and Moulin Rouge were nominated, you think a beautiful...
Okay, I do love Moulin Rouge. I will do that. And I do like Lord of the Rings. It's not... What, pin in it. Okay. I think this means I need more wine since we're already arguing, so...
Okay, yeah. Reset.
Reset, back to being friends. Remember, our love of Keira keeps our friendship going.
And yeah, okay, so before we dive back into talking seriously about the film, let's just take a moment going back in to say that Keira is absolutely gorgeous in this film, and she's wonderful, and there were lots of John sighs in the watch party last night. I know, Aaron, you want more confrontational, John.
This is Aaron and me, and I think Bernie and like a couple of other people. We can really bring this side out of John, and it's the best. I love debate John. He's my favorite. But yeah, I watched this movie. I rewatched it 2 days ago, and I watched it on quite a big screen with surround sound. And so I got those nice close-ups of her facial expressions. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started, John, which is the amount of like the range of emotion she's able to express, just very, very tiny little bit of the lip or her eyes, something that translates a lot of emotion in just seconds of a thing. And do you know which scene this is from, John? Is this when she's looking at the boys playing with the Duke? Yeah. Bess's boys? Yeah. Or is it a different one? So that face, she's literally seeing her husband with her husband's mistress and the three boys, which I think at this point she still hadn't had her son yet. And he's playing with them as if they were his own children. And the Bess and the Duke look like the married couple rather than the Duke and G here. So this look shows devastation and disappointment, and also a little bit of insult, quite frankly. You know, it's her own home. She's seeing her husband have another family, basically. But we do find out later, whenever G says, hey, I want to make a deal. I'll be with Charles Gray and you can be with Bess. And she says, you have these three boys, you know, Bess has three boys. And he goes, do you think that, and I hate to use this term because I've been saying illegitimate this whole time. I don't like this term, but he said, do you think I could make those bastards my heirs, right? So we learn later that the Duke doesn't really, care necessarily for these boys, but that scene is devastating, and her facial expressions just show that kind of like disappointment in herself for not living up to what she feels that everyone telling her she needs to do, which is give him a son. And also that look of betrayal of, he could, and she even has that line when she hears about the relationship between Bess and the Duke. Of all the women in England, you had to have basically her best friend, right? Which is that he could have gotten any random girl in England and brought her over with her 7, 8, 10 sons, whatever. But the fact that you had her best friend looking like the Duke's wife and looking like a family, and that's not what G ever had with him. And whether she wants it or not is kind of beside the point. The point is she doesn't have it, and that's what society says she should have.
And she was more than willing to have that with him at the beginning. And now he's showing, her best friend the affection that he never bothered to even entertain giving to her, which is just infuriating. Now, as to whether that's because, because he's enjoying getting to play father to her boys, and maybe that plays into it, but yeah, it's
that scene is that, she has a lot of facial expressions that is devastating. And okay, now speaking of devastating scenes, we have to do it, John. I know it's hard, but we have to talk about the scene where she gives up Eliza, her baby girl.
Actually, hold on just a moment, because I meant to drop something in during the mid-roll and it got away from me. Thank you, Leaf, for the reminder. Thanks, here. Tomorrow, tune in to Here Be Dragons at 6:00 p.m. We're going to be talking about that's Stephen, Nessie, myself, and Stephen's mom, Betsy, are going to be talking about season 2 of Umbrella Academy, which somehow was even worse than the first season, but I'm going to get through it somehow.
I
was talking about this last
night. You guys
did
amazing of talking about season 1. Your bit at the beginning. Oh, I don't want to ruin it. There, just watch it. It's great. The great stream. They're going to talk. I'm sure it's going to be even more interesting when you guys talk about season 2. And Mama Betsy, Mama Stark, we love you. You're the mother of Here Be Dragons. And I was so excited when she came up on my screen. I'm not going to lie. I literally jumped up from my chair and started dancing, going, "It's mom, it's mom." So I was so excited to see her. And I'm glad that she's also going to be back. So
yeah, I will say, if you guys haven't watched our coverage of the first season, go ahead and watch that. And yes, I was acting a little bit mischievous for the first 5 minutes of that stream, but sadly that means I cannot possibly live up to that on the stream tomorrow. So you guys are just going to have to deal with my honest appraisal of the season. But
we're not used to that from you, John, just praising something endlessly. So I really don't. It's going to be a really weird change of pace, but I think we're going to be able to deal with it. So
yeah. Okay, so I know what you were about to launch into discussion-wise, but I do want to take some time first to talk about some more about the big what I call the Oscar clip scene, which we've danced around, but I really want to dive into it, which is after G discovers that the Duke and Bess have slept together, and it's that moment where he comes back into their room, and it's just how she did not get an Oscar nomination for this film, I really will never know, because that scene in particular, she's absolutely incredible. It's why this is my favorite performance of hers. Especially the line where she's building it up bit by bit, and it's when she pretty much explodes and says, I have one.
I'm trying to find the direct quote because I literally paused it and wrote down line by line this scene because it is my favorite. Okay, I've got it. Are you ready?
Yep, go ahead.
So she says, "Of all the women in England, you had to throw yourself on her. I have raised Charlotte, the illegitimate daughter, and not complained of your affairs. But all I have this one thing for myself. She is my sole comfort in our marriage, and you have robbed me of my only friend. And then the Duke responds, I know what I can get, what I can give, and what I can give in this marriage, and what is expected. I have fulfilled my duties, and you as a husband, and you have not fulfilled yours as a wife, right? Going back once again, give me that son. You know, it's just like he uses it every time. It's like his ace, like it's like his ace up the sleeve every time, or his call. Like he that's his one thing that he has against her, because really, other than not producing a son, how is she a bad wife? I mean, she hosts all of his parties. She's this, you know, and actually I wanted to talk about this slightly, just real quick, and then we'll get back to this amazing scene, which is jealousy. I think the Duke is straight up jealous of G. She's smart. She's great at politics. Everyone loves her. No one likes the Duke just because of the virtue of where he was born. People are sucking up to him, but no one is interested in talking to the Duke for hours and hours, you know, like they are with G. And she's fun. She gambles, right? She goes to parties. She dances. And the Duke is just bleh. I'm sorry. So jealousy is one thing I wanted to talk about. But back to this scene. So G is confronting him. It's so true, Micah. It's so true. G confronts him and says, you know, this is the one thing I had, and you had to have it. Like, what, you couldn't leave me this one thing, which I think really is the ultimate isolation for her. Even not as worse, obviously, as not being able to see her children, but it's the first major point of isolation, which is she loses her friend, right? Their relationship is never the same again. And in addition to that, now she's living as a throuple involuntarily. You know, there are plenty of poly people out there that are living in very consensual thruples, quadruples, you know, all sorts of people together. But this is completely not consensual. This is not what she wants. And it's another way for him to assert himself. And I had this one thing for myself. She is the sole comfort and my sole comfort in this marriage. I kind of cry every time. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's
watch.
The way she delivers. You have robbed me of my only friend. It's the way her voice cracks as she's saying that. It's so damn good.
It's so like it's the best. There are great scenes, but that is the best. Like I said, we've been robbed. Like, how did that not win all the awards? I mean, that scene was just amazing. And I think that scene is also, it really shows she feels helpless throughout the whole movie, but that's the one scene where she, I think, really lets her frustration out to the point where it can be dangerous, because one time when she kind of lets out a little bit of frustration, when she says, let's make a deal, right? I'll be with Charles Grey, you'll be with her. After that, she was attacked by the Duke. So she's emotional, but she's also taking a huge risk. She is opening herself up to physical, sexual, and verbal abuse, you know? And she's so hurt that doesn't matter. And that's I think about the scene, what really gets me is that she's taking such a risk, but she is so hurt because it's Bess and because it's her husband. And you know, and even at that point, she had kind of given up on a relationship with him, but it was Bess that was the only thing that she had. And we do have, you know, we might, if you want to, we could talk about this later, a little bit sort of a queer scene between Bess and G. So, you know, they were very close. And so the Duke did the worst thing he could have.
It's heartbreaking that moment of intimacy between them comes just like a scene or two before this scene. So it's like you have
exactly
that closeness between them, and then this utter betrayal, which just makes it worse.
Yes.
And there's another moment in that scene that I really like from her. It's after he says, you know, as a husband, I have fulfilled my duties. As a wife, you have not. And she does like this, like, incredulous kind of like, you know, like, I can't believe you just said that. It's like, that's your response to me.
To this, really?
Letting all this out. Yeah. That's your rebuttal. And it's like,
and it's common for abusive relationships, for when you correctly point out something that your partner has done wrong, for them to bring up something to change the subject to where it's, oh, let's talk about what you've done wrong. And the one thing he can find is, you haven't had a son, which, as we know now, the guy decides with his body decides if you get a son or daughter. So it's actually the Duke's fault. You know, that she has, although she does mention she had 2 stillborn sons. So it wasn't that she wasn't able, to bear a son. And so this was the one thing he had. And he wanted to use that and twist it to say, until you do this one thing, don't expect anything out of me. And then once she has the son, he's the same person, right? He doesn't change or get better really that much. And so we think, okay, he just really wants the son. And then after that, he'll not change, but at least mild out, chill a little, right? But he just doesn't. He continues this control over her. And you also realize that it's not just about the fact that others are going to find out that his wife cheated on him, that he's been cuckolded, right? It's the fact that why would she do that to me, right? The way he sees it is he's given her everything, a house, children, very comfortable lifestyle, and she's all famous and going to everything. And he says, he doesn't care about her happiness, but he sees it as she should be at least content. And the fact that she isn't, he takes it, he brushes it off as, well, I've done everything I should be doing, so why aren't you, giving me a son? And it's just, he isn't doing what he should be doing.
Well, even to the last, inside, he believes that he's done his best, because it all goes back to what he actually says at the end, which is that, in ways that you have judged harshly. So he's still refusing to acknowledge that he's ever done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And the sort of joke that I like to make when we were watching it last night, and anytime, and we've watched the movie together in the past, and I was like, you think that the Duke can't get any worse? Just hold on, because it's
just wait.
He just ratchets it up as the film goes on, with the exception of the end, which he's still being horrible, but he does decide that he's going to at least relent in sort of endless torture.
Yes.
But up to that point, it's like anytime you think you've seen him at his worst, he's just going to keep proving you wrong. And actually, going back to what we were talking about with sort of moments of comedy and sort of unintentional humor on his part, it's like the only way you can get past some of these moments is to give the audience a chance to laugh a little bit. And it's that confrontation scene after she's been with Gray in Bath for a while, and he and the mother show up, and she's surprised, and he's like, have you seen many of our circle here? And she says something like, I believe so. It's like this sort of humorous interplay where she already knows that they know, and she's just trying to play it off, but then she lets her emotions win out, and you can see she's overcome, where she just says, I won't give him up. And it's like she can't hold in what she's feeling by that point. And so it's this little bit of humor then followed up by this unleashing of emotion, which is just really sad, I think. And it's it's gut-wrenching to watch. And and the Duke gets he's so horrible in that scene, just because
that scene, because he ends it with, here's some I don't know if he says our children or my children. He might say our children, but here's letters from our children. He goes, the son would have written, but of course he hasn't even turned 1. And that's there are so many times in this movie where I want to punch the Duke in the face, but that scene for some reason really gets me, because it's you're now going to, okay, you want to go be with this guy, you're going to give up your children, and here they are saying how much they love and miss you. And if you notice, she doesn't take the letters because she knows what's happening. He's using her children against her, and it's petty and it's awful and it's evil, and and so she's not going to have any part of that. And to use the children like that is a huge theme in this movie. The Duke uses his children to get G to do what he wants, and Bess, the whole reason she does anything, that a lot of what she does is because she wants to get her children back from her husband, who's keeping them from her. So there's this and you know, there was this assumption that the wife is property and the children are property, right? And so whenever so they finish that scene, right? And so, you know, so they know about the affair, they know about all of this. But what's, I think, most interesting is a line that the mother said whenever G first found out about the affair between Bess and Duke. And she basically she goes and says, you know, she left the house when she originally found out about the affair, because she told the Duke, I want Bess out, and he said, I won't do it. And she goes, and the wife, the mother says, you either write a letter demanding her to leave or you go back. And she said, if I write a letter, it's not going to change. He's told me it's not going to happen. She says, well, you should go back. You have no other option. And so that line kind of really resonates me throughout.
You must give up your politics and
give up your politics and gambling.
Yeah, and resume your wifely duties. It's like,
it just internalized misogyny rears its ugly head again. Yeah, it really, like, at first when that conversation starts between her and her mother, it seems like she might be a little bit, she's angry, like, oh, how could the Duke do this to you? And then like 5 seconds later, she's like, well, time to go back home, you know? And I'm sorry, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I think the mom and the Duke are like a team, like a crushing patriarchal team that is just imposing themselves on G, and they both think they know what's best for her, and it's just not true at all.
Which is so ridiculous that she, you know, works as though they're a team, because the Duke will be dismissive to her without a second thought. Yeah. So, you know, once again, it's that internalized misogyny. It's absolutely dreadful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was
like with Bess, right? When Bess was trying to stick up for G and he said, shut up, woman, right? There are these times where he just puts women in their place. Even if they feel like they have some like if anyone has influence over the Duke, it should be Bess. She's the one throwing him the goods. You know, I'm sorry, it's true.
Although
she should be the one that might be able to like soften him a little, but he doesn't.
It is a really great moment though when finally and we're jumping around again, but after it's revealed that
our style,
after it's revealed that G is pregnant with Gray's child, and the Duke decides that he's going to send her away to have the child in secret, and then Bess stands firm and says that she's going with G, and he's like, no, you're not, and he's like, I mean, yes, I am, if G will have me, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I really did like that moment of her being able to, you know, her standing firm and putting him in his place. It was at least,
and those are those little signs of independence that G also does throughout the movie. These little kind of knife twisting, like, okay, yeah, you control everything, but I'm going to do this one thing, even though you don't want me to do it, or not do this one thing that you want me to do. You know, either way. And yeah, that was probably the scene. And oh God, we're getting to it. I'm going to cry. This like. So Bess and I know it's coming. Bess and G go, and G has the illegitimate child, the child out of wedlock, and that scene, man, that's where I really loved Bess, because I realized she really did care about her friend. She was willing to do that. She could have just stayed with the Duke in the nice mansion and not have, but she was going to be there for her friend. She knew. The Duke doesn't understand how traumatic this experience is going to be for G. He probably doesn't even care. But Bess, you know, who had 3 of her children, knows how traumatic. So weird that he doesn't care. Yeah. So, all right, fam, get ready to cry, because this scene, we've got in the carriage, we've got Bess and G, and with little baby Eliza, this little girl, right? And they go to, and she goes and she's going to give the baby to Charles Gray's family. And she goes and she doesn't see Charles there, and she asks, and they said, oh, your husband, once again, the Duke is controlling everything, right? Your husband thought it'd be best if I come, right? And I think it would be then, yeah. Oh no, you had to put the picture up. This is such a crushing scene. And so she kind of gives the baby right to them. And so they're taking it back to the carriage, and she says, wait. And she goes, her name is Eliza, right? The last thing she can do as a mother is to name her own child. And if you'll notice in the scene, she tries to be calm, collected, and proud, right? She tries to be not emotional. But then the second that the baby is getting they're bringing the baby into the carriage, it starts crying. And I said it, John. And mothers, I'm not a mother, but when you hear your baby cry, what are you going to do? You're going to want to go to it, right? And so she tries to reach out, and Bess stops her and hugs her. And of course, G is just breaking out, bawling. I mean, anyone in this situation, she's just given up her child. And even though I've seen it so many times, I wait for that child's cry, because I know when that comes, like, I'm going to be crying, right along with G in that scene, because she had finally had a child with the man that she loved, and she can't have him, and she can't have that child. She can't have anything. It's just.
Yeah, Anna, we're right there with you. It's. Again, I'm like,
and while the Duke gets to keep Charlotte, she doesn't get to keep Eliza. Patriarchy, all right? The guy gets to keep his legitimate children, make them go away or keep them however he wishes, but the woman doesn't get its decision. Oh, God, I know, right, guys? I'm so sorry. I'm just going to drink more. It's fine.
Once again, I'm just like, where the hell were the awards for this performance? Because the way she just breaks down in that moment, and she's holding on to Bess, and and the anguish and the hurt, and it's so good. And yeah, Micah,
I was just commenting back to Mike on that. Yeah, the first time is like heartbreaking. It's still heartbreaking after that, but I think most people would agree, usually your first time watching or seeing something, the emotions are very new and raw, right? And so I think this scene, the first time I saw it, was like, I think after the scene was over, I paused it and just kind of stood in my kitchen and stared at the wall for a second. Like, I needed to kind of recover. It was just a really, really hard scene. For me, it was the hardest scene in the movie. Maybe the only other hardest scene would be the sexual assault scene, as far as just devastating for G, because we follow G. She's the Duchess. She is the main person that we are following, and you really feel for her. And even when, you feel like it's really hard, because she could have been really petty about a lot of things, and she wasn't, right? She was not petty about Charlotte. She took care of Charlotte, even though it wasn't her own. And honestly, she did the best she could with Bess. I mean, she was as good, as honest as probably could have been expected. She didn't like abuse her in any way. She swallowed her pride and like kept being in this throuple that she didn't want to be in. And so she really, I think of all the characters in here,
I just love hearing you say throuple.
That's what it is. It's not consensual, but that's what it is. 3 people that are technically, polyamorous relationship would probably be a better, I don't know, but they're a throuple. They live together. The Duke is with both of them technically at the same time. But polygamy, it's all sorts of stuff. They're a throuple. And so G really, you see all of these hardships that happen to her, and you realize that she is a good person, and that there are good people in her life. But that everyone makes mistakes and everyone errs, especially when women particularly are put in these difficult situations where they are being kind of jerked this way and jerked that way, and are quite frankly told by society that the easier and perhaps safer thing to do would just be to blame the woman, right? Your boyfriend cheats on you, go after the girl. That's kind of still a little bit ingrained in our society, whereas, 100% of the fault lies with the Duke. But of course, G sees a little bit of fault on the part of Bess, and we don't blame her, right? She's human in that way. And she's also a good person, though, who in the end sacrifices a lot for her children, just like Bess did, which really shows they have a lot in common, and that they are, if only both of them were queer, they could just be together. Although I guess in this time you really couldn't do that, but they really do care about each other.
Yeah, there's a much better version of this movie where it's the love story between G and Bess. Because between you and me, I think that Dominic Cooper does a perfectly great job performance-wise. And I see why she's interested in him. But I don't know. He's probably not the most compelling love interest. I think I totally would have been shipping G and Bess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you saying you're talking about Charles Gray, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little lower down, like on the list of Keira love interests for me. I didn't get the I didn't the one thing I saw for sure was that he was passionate about politics. She was passionate about politics, and she wanted to be with someone that shared that interest. And the Duke did not, despite having a very high power, and so or a high position of power. And so we do have their love, and we do see that they do love each other, and that alone should be great and wonderful. But I don't know, John. I'm not feeling John. I'm about to call him John Grey. I'm not feeling Charles Grey. Like the one scene maybe where I kind of I really related to him was when she finally returns home after having the child out of wedlock and deciding, okay, she relents, right? She yields to her husband and comes home, and he runs and he's yelling at them, and they're having breakfast once again as a throuple. And so she leaves and she goes to Charles Grey, and he says, I want to be with you. I want you to have my children. I don't care if they're boys or girls, which, at first seems like a nice commentary, but then it's like, oh, I love you. I want to have your children. Like, okay, how about like, I want to be, okay, fine. Like, it's a very natalist idea, but okay.
Well,
and
no,
he's really showing her, like, but that comment was against the Duke, who cared if there was a boy or a girl. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I do like the way he delivers that, where it's like really calling out the Duke, where he's like, and I don't care if they're girls.
And I don't care. Yeah, because that's the one scene where he's not actually looking at her. The whole scene, he's looking into her eyes, begging her to run away with him. And the only time he does it is when he says, I want to have your children. And then he goes, and I don't care if they're right. He's like directing that to the Duke, saying, I'm a better man than you. She deserves me. She doesn't deserve, like, you don't deserve her. Right? She's too good for you, which is, I think, like the whole, like, the Duchess, she's too good for you. Like, that should be like the byline, like the subtitle. Because, like, she's so amazing. And he lucked out having her, and he doesn't see it that way.
I will say that the thing that helps Dominic Cooper in this film is that I didn't really think that much of him when I saw this film originally, but he is so damn fun as Howard Stark. Especially if you've seen the show Agent Carter, that he gained some points for that from me, because he is very entertaining to watch in that. So side note, if anybody hasn't seen the 2 seasons that were done of Marvel's Agent Carter, starring both Hayley Atwell and Dominic Cooper, I recommend it. It's really good. And I say that as someone who's not, one of the biggest MCU fans, but it was a good show. Okay.
It is known that he's not a big MCU fan.
Yeah, there's my side promotion for the stream.
I actually thought of one other scene where I'm kind of into Grey, and that's when he's just given this political speech with lots of passion, and she watches him, and she's inspired by it, right? And they're back kind of alone, and she just all of a sudden blurts out, "Do you think of me when we're not together?" And he's taken aback, and he goes, "You ought to know that I do." Right? And she goes, there was a hesitation, which is like, girl, I've been there. Like when you tell a guy, oh, do you like me? And he takes a little bit. You're like, oh, does he really like me? Right? So she was like, oh, there was hesitation. She said, no, I'm just not used to someone asking, so forward, much less you, right? He's kind of venerating her. Like, he never thought he would get anyone like her. And then
that's the line where where everybody was saying, is this Victorian era John? Because
yeah, it's so true. And then when he uses it with all the time. Yes. Oh, exactly the line I was going for. Yeah, and he's just, he thought that he never had a chance, but he loved her nonetheless. And then she finally, like, in contemporary terms, she made a move, right? And he reciprocated, and that was kind of the beginning of their affair. But that scene, I think, is probably my favorite with Grey, even more so than him saying, run away with me and all of this stuff, because, we could put a pin in the run away with me scene. But that scene where he says, I think of you all the time. He's expressing his feelings to her, which is like the opposite of the Duke. He expresses zero feelings except for being hungry and horny. Like, that's it. and wanting to play with his dogs or whatever. And so that scene to me was them recognizing that they do have feelings for each other, and that, maybe that they could have a beautiful love story, even though unfortunately it ends tragically.
And I do want to point out a moment of this scene, and this is also my so subtle way of bringing in a moment from Pride and Prejudice as well. And well, it's that contact of hands holding. It's especially in in years gone past, that was something that was very intimate, where we don't necessarily think so much of it now. Well, maybe, especially not now when nobody's touching hands. But
yeah, seriously, like, get away from me with your hands, people. Yeah, no, the bases have changed since then, right? Like holding hands was like considered like woohoo, it was basically making out, or whatever.
Yeah,
it was considered.
And so when he reaches out and he and grabs her hand, it's like a big moment, really big.
Yes, it is. Just think of the Beatles song, "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Like, that's how innocent and beautiful it is. It's like, I just want to, hold your hand. We think of that as like really sweet, and like you see little kids hold hands or whatever, you're like crossing the street, but at the time that was considered extremely intimate. And if you were a married woman, there's no way you should be holding the hand of any other man except for your husband's, which, or your son or whatever. But so I thought that was, you're right, as it was very simple touch, right? But that was more intimate and sweet than any moment she ever had with the Duke.
And I'm assuming you mean Sense and Sensibility. Yes, I have seen that. I think I saw it years and years ago when I was younger, because my mom watched it, which is at that time, what was it, 95? That's pretty much the only reason I would have been watching Sense and Sensibility at 10 years old. But then I have since revisited it, and I have a very beautiful Blu-ray edition, physical media. Woo! So yeah.
Hey, John, do you like physical media more than digital media? Whoa! Stop the presses right now.
But
this is our headline for tomorrow.
But yeah, I do really love that one, despite the fact that it does not star Keira Knightley. But shocker, I do actually love period pieces with other actors.
Just in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Stephen. I'm gonna drink to physical media too, because you know what? I'm just gonna go. I want to finish this cup, so I'm going for it. Cheers, my friends. I think I told John once how many DVDs I own, and I think he fainted. Look at this, like in the messaging, like he stopped messaging me for a while, and I was like, oh my god, did someone get the smelling salts? J-Dubs has fainted.
So much to the point that
other than DVDs of my like middle school and high school orchestra performances, I own like 3 DVDs. Other than that,
which is why I ended up like getting you a couple like movies, Keira movies. Also, I was like, no, it's unacceptable that you don't have some, and I believe the Duchess was one of them. So
the Duchess was one of them, and yes, and I think you also gave me the director's cut rather than the theatrical release, right? So it's a little bit different. Yes, yeah,
which was just trimmed down to get it to PG-13, because apparently
I love those wide shots in the sex scenes. Come on, I need that.
Because apparently they really needed to draw in the young kids for this movie.
Yeah. This is such a kid-friendly movie, though.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I don't even remember where we left off. What was our last thing?
Oh my god. Seriously, though? We were talking about Grey, I think, and their love relationship was the last thing I remember.
Okay. No wonder we hit a dead end. Oh, no.
No. I do want to say one thing, actually, though, about Grey, which is that the Duke, when he threatens G, he doesn't only threaten, you'll never see your children again. He also threatens something very important, which is, I will make sure that Charles Grey never is allowed into any political circles. He will be a pariah and he'll never become prime minister, which is what Charles Grey, that was his aspiration. And so you also have the Duke controlling also the men around him, because he is high up in politics and he punishes, them or rewards them one way or the other. And I think Charles Grey, so her going back to her children and going back to her husband was not just for herself. It was also for Grey. And it shows, I think, how much she was willing to give up for his happiness. Even though they would be happy together, they would be shunned. And she thought that it would be better for him to achieve his goals and for her to be with her children.
Do you think she would have thrown that to the wind, though, if not for the threat of not being able to see her children?
Absolutely. Children are number one, and then Grey's politics, being ruined, definitely number two. I mean, it really, I love it because it really does throw back to that scene where G herself says that there are limits for what one will do for their children. And the whole movie is about how women have to sacrifice for their children, really, their own happiness and their own comfort. And quite frankly, for the children of others. She raised Charlotte, who was not her own child. And the way that she treated all of her girls the same, I think was really refreshing and beautiful in this movie. I think Bess asked, Charlotte, the oldest, math doesn't add up because Charlotte is 9 and they've been married 7 years or whatever. And so she says, and Bess asked, do you love her? And she goes, yes, the same as all my children. And that's one of those examples, once again, of G being just a good person, especially to children who need the most compassion and help and love.
I'm sorry, Micah.
Micah's killing it this live chat.
Oh God, I love it.
Yeah, but that is interesting, Micah. Though the comment about that's really the time he uses his political standing is to manipulate her, like not to, help the Whig Party or better England. He doesn't care. Yeah,
he's completely disinterested. And I did make a joke last night, like as horrible as the Duke is, and I don't want to sympathize with him at all, but like him in that first dinner scene with the Whig Party while they're giving speeches and the way he just gets up and walks out, that really is me at social functions.
You know what's funny, John, is like you going out and being like, bye, I'm the Duchess. I'm sitting there being like, woo, let's party, like let's talk about politics, get more wine going. Like that's why we work as friends. You're the Ian to my Yang. Like it works out so well. But no, and when we talked about Pride and Prejudice, you said the same thing about the love interest where he was standing like in the corner at a party and wasn't like wanting to dance or do anything. Whereas Keira's character, Elizabeth, am I messing that up? It's your favorite. I hope I'm not messing that up. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, Elizabeth is dancing and having a good time, right? And you see that commonly with these Keira period pieces, which is that she is a socialite and her husband is a dull. I mean, quite frankly, although in this case, in Pride and Prejudice, that wasn't her husband yet. But oh no, I'm sorry. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, although, oh my God, yes, by all means, let's not spoil that Pride and Prejudice ends.
Movie you've already done a stream on, and then we talked about again in another stream.
And
I have a 10-year rule. If it's more than 10 years old, you should have watched it by now, and it's your fault.
But
not
it is
you,
very
John.
unusual.
Collectively, you.
It is very unusual, though, for the heroine and her love interest to get together at the end of a Jane Austen story. I mean, so you really should watch those spoilers.
I know it's really unpredictable. That
I will say that it's interesting to kind of draw that parallel between those two characters who couldn't really be more different, even though they're both socially awkward. But whereas Darcy's social awkwardness hides sort of a gentle soul underneath, and kind of obscures that. The Duke's just covers up this horrible, unfeeling, person who, just gets worse and worse. So,
and I believe in Anna Karenina, her husband, who is a little awful, gets a little bit better towards the end of the movie, whereas in the Duchess, not that much. We don't see that much character development or growth at all with the Duke, whereas in Pride and Prejudice and in Anna Karenina, you see the love interest, or at least, sorry, I'm mixing these. Anna Karenina, you see the husband grow a little bit. And then in Pride and Prejudice, you see the love interest grow a lot, actually. He finally starts to express his feelings, which is something that the Duke doesn't seem capable of.
Yeah, I have it's funny that you say her husband in Anna Karenina is gets less awful. I think I probably have a bit more sympathy for him in that I actually don't think he's, he has certain ideas that are in keeping with the time, and maybe he's limited by that. But I do think that he's a far more gentle soul than the Duke ever is.
Oh my God. Anna has a really good point, which is Anna Karenina was written by men. That's why, it's a little bit of a spoiler, though, so I won't say it. But yeah.
I'm just going to put it up. If you don't know, that's how the story ends.
It's done. If you haven't seen it, yeah. It's true. It's also because I think it's a Russian story, too, and the women always die in the end in a Russian story as well. But yeah, it's kind of true. It's very common to just go ahead and kill off the female character. Or like in Little Women, which we talked about on a stream with Braun Steries a while back, which is the line about, your female character should either be married in the end or dead. And that is really what storytelling male storytelling was like for hundreds of years. The female characters either went back, stayed married, went back or got married, or died. And in the case of, the Duchess, even though it's not a fictional thing, we have the wife going back to being married, right? But then a lot of fictional stories, whenever the woman transgresses, she dies. That's kind of a huge literary trope. Which a lot of movies are obviously based off of literature. I mean, there's Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, I think I remember. I think I remember an interview with Keira where she, during when they were making Anna Karenina, which was that when she read the book when she was younger, she viewed Anna as like unabashedly the hero of the story, and she was very much rooting for her. And then rereading it, she was able to see that the author kind of simultaneously loves Anna and judges her, which is a real testament to that story being written by a man. And so,
yes, exactly. Yeah. And I do Chinese literature, or I study Chinese literature. I don't write it. I would just make that clear. I study Chinese literature. It's very common, to have the women either put in their place or removed from the board completely. Literature until very recently and media seems like it doesn't really know what to do with an independent woman or a woman that transgresses, which is why we have, historical events such as the witch trials. A lot of times women that were accused of being witches were because they lived out in the woods by themselves and weren't married. And they made herbal remedies and made money off of that. And that was just, homeopathic medicine. And they were saying, oh, it's spells and it's potions, right? And sorry, I'm getting way off topic from this movie, but I really enjoy this conversation of female tropes, right? What happens to females in the end? Whereas men, there are a lot more possibilities at the end of each story. They become successful, or they don't succeed, but they learn a good lesson, or they become the king, or they become a pauper and go on. And, there are all these endings. And for the women, it's usually dead or married for hundreds of years of literature. So...
Which leads us to the end of this film, where she does not escape her circumstances. It's not even, unfortunately, she could have run away with Gray, but she would have, sacrificed her 3 children. So she gives up her daughter, for the sake of her 3 other children, and lives a life without love, unfortunately. So, yeah, how do you feel about how, it's obviously based on a real life story, so it's not like they could really change it, but how do you walk away from this movie feeling?
This actually, the ending is why it's my favorite movie of Keira's period pieces, and just in general favorite Keira movie, is because that's how it happened. We want to have this idea where she was going to go off and run off with Gray and be happy, and even though it was going to be hard, their love was going to persevere. And that's unfortunately at the time, and still for women in many parts of the world right now, that's not an option. You are stuck for life. And you might transgress for a year or 2 or even more, but you will always be roped back in. Your husband will always control you, right? With Bess, it was not until the Duke, a more powerful man, claimed her that she was able to escape her circumstances, right? And she went straight from those circumstances being owned by one man to being owned by another. So even then, her circumstances improved, but they are still the same basic contract of being owned, right? And so I think the ending, and I actually wrote down like the little title card. They end it with kind of title cards of what happened, which I think was kind of the best way to do it. It was kind of somber, and I just sit there, and you kind of just watch and what it says. And so it talks about how that we learn right in the very end that her illegitimate daughter Eliza is being raised by Gray's family, and we have one title card that says that she visited Eliza often secretly, and that warms my heart because she had to give up her daughter, but she didn't have to completely not have any relationship with her daughter, right? And I don't know enough about the historical aspects if Eliza knew who her mother was, but even if it was like, oh, this is some random, lady who has taken it, Duchess who has taken interest in you, even if she didn't know that was her mom, I'm sure she felt love from Georgiana. So that to me was very heartwarming. And then we find out that Charles Grey became prime minister. So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of patriarchy. That's how it goes. The guy kind of wins in the end. Like, good for him. He seems like a good guy, but it's like, dude, you get what you want and she doesn't. But other than her, he got everything he wanted, right? So I was like, okay, well, Georgiana, she rejoined society. So you learn that, which makes me feel a little better personally, because if you really see how much the attention hurts her and the paparazzi hurts her. And so to be accepted back into polite society is going to make her life easier. So that's great. And then I think the hardest part of these little title slides is kind of the last one, which is where it says that they don't use the word throuple, but that's what I'm going to use. The throuple lived together until G died. And then with G's blessing, Bess and the Duke got married. And Bess became the next Duchess of Devonshire. I'm sorry, you might hear the police siren out there. But I think that, I have a lot of feels about that. My first is that, like, great for Bess is like my initial reaction. At least she gets the title because she's basically been acting as his wife. She might as well get the title, right? But then it also hurts where it's like, gosh, these two women just couldn't, that they couldn't. It was either as a throuple or one of them married to the Duke. Like, I just wish that, like I said, I just wish they could go off and be together, but I know that wasn't possible. And so it shows the sacrifice, I think, of both women in that one line. The Bess, whether or not she loved the Duke, it was a huge decision for her to betray her friend and to live with the Duke and to commit adultery, essentially. But I think that what I like about that line is that Bess and G realized that they were both stuck in the same system and that they were going to have to stick together and do the best that they can. And I think that last line and this whole movie really shows that is how women navigated the patriarchy at the time, and that in a lot of ways similar, luckily not exactly the same, but there are a lot of ways that we now have to navigate the patriarchy, and we have to be forgiving to other women, and we have to support them and lift them up. And I think that's what G invested in the end, even though it was very difficult and their relationship changed so much. It was no longer as beautiful as it was in the beginning. And so I think that the way that it ends, sitting there watching the title cards, when I actually first watched it, I hated the ending. And then on the second, third, fourth, I guess this was my fifth rewatch, I appreciated it because it was, first of all, the woman didn't die, which is like my least favorite ending. Like if you're going to have a dying ending, just kill everyone, kill all the characters, male and female and non-binary, trans, whatever. But she didn't die, so that's one. But then the second is that she did find some, I'm not going to use the word happiness, I'm not going to use the word content, but she found a balance, right, in her life. And it was unfortunately the best she could do if she wanted to see her children. And that is, to me, really speaks volumes, which is that in the end, women, especially mothers, they're going to give up their own happiness for their children and to be with their children. And the Duke obviously had no interest in being a father. It was just going to be maids paying attention to those and nannies paying attention to those children, right? She knew that they needed a mother. And that is, I think, what's most touching is that she sacrificed, her hurt for what the Bess and Duke have done to her, and her missing of Charles Grey and wanting to be with him. But also those children were all that mattered, including Charlotte, who was not even her own child.
Yeah, I don't. Talking about the ending, I'm not always the biggest fan, and this is sort of the
Oh, also, I
editor.
did say patriarchy in that rant, so drink.
Okay, and this is sort of the editor and filmmaker inside me, where I like movies to kind of end with punctuation points, basically, where you have a really powerful like final image that it makes you think. And so I'm not always a big fan of the let's throw up title cards over a series of scenes showing the characters doing whatever, and that's kind of how this movie ends. But I think the reason why it works is because this is a story that doesn't end there. She continues on in this way for the rest of her life, and so it's an ongoing story, and it's something that is like it's a story that's sort of paving the way for other women throughout history. This is a story that kind of keeps getting told of women who are weighed down by these horrible men who have control over them. So you're not going to get in this instance the sort of major like that's your powerful ending. I actually think a really great counterpoint to this movie, as I mentioned in the watch party last night, is Colette, which is why I hope we get to talk about it. That movie does end with what I call a punctuation point, final shot. And also we get a great, I won't spoil too much for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but we do get one of the all-time best telling off scenes where
Yes. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I love that scene. So it was just like, I won't say it because once again, spoiling, but that I look forward. I know you have a lot of streams obviously in the future, but I look forward to one day talking about Colette with you, because that is one of the best scenes that.
And you want to talk about?
I have so much.
You want to talk about all-time best Keira Knightley scenes?
Yes.
Her telling off her husband in that scene is just superb, and it's like if you watch this film feeling sort of deflated in the end, like Colette is the antidote to that, because
I like to watch the Duchess and then the antidote to like make up for it. Also, I was just going to say, if you could put up Micah's comment about the final scene. And yes, these title cards are going over a scene of her children playing, and it really reiterates this theme. I'm so sorry to interrupt, John. I just really thought that comment was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and that's why I found it really interesting that when I first asked you to come on, because I wanted to do another Keira discussion, I said to you, we can do either the Duchess or Colette. It's funny that I was thinking of those two movies, because they really do, even though they're set in very different time periods, different countries, they're trading in a lot of that same stock of of talking about the obstacles that women had to overcome being controlled by their husbands, and especially in Colette's case, where her career is controlled by her husband. She doesn't even really have a career. He takes credit for everything. So, and the fact that she's able to rise above that makes it a really nice, almost sequel to this film in a way.
And what's interesting about the two movies is that you have a man and Keira and her husband, and she's good at the thing that he wants to be good or should be good at, right? In the case of Colette, it's writing, and in the case of the Duchess, it's politics. And in Colette, and we'll obviously get into this when we do talk about it, but he kind of wants to be good at writing and wants to be a famous writer. But in the Duchess, he's like, I have the title. What does it matter? Everyone's going to kiss my butt anyway. He really doesn't care about England or the party or anything. And it's, I don't know the exact time period, but I know they talk a little bit about there's disruption in France. So we're getting a lot of closer to I think what's supposed to be close to the French Revolution. I'm terrible at anything but Chinese history, so I apologize for everything. But there's this sense that there's a lot of political uprisings, a lot of stuff going on that the Duke should be concerned with, and he's not. So that's what I like about Colette and about the Duchess as a pair, which is it shows the women doing the job that the men should do or want to do, and they're just not good at it. So, I'm going to appreciate that.
And of course, it's really fitting that in both films you have both husbands are kind of completely like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they're not even aware of how horrible they are.
Yeah.
They're just sort of very comfortable being who they are, and they think that the world should just kind of make way for them, especially in Colette. Willie is absolutely insufferable. We can't get too talking about it, but I do want to throw out one line that he says, which sort of encapsulates, the fact that he uses this as a way to get out of responsibility, where he says, this is what men do. We're the weaker sex.
Yes, I think he even says something about like we have impulses or urges or something like that, where it was just like, dude, control them then. Like that's the thing. Yeah, and that was a really great line because it goes against what is traditionally been said, which is the women are the weaker sex, right? But what's interesting is in this Colette, which I'm so excited to talk to you about, it shows that some men can be very mindless in what they do, and women can be very smart and calculating and prudent and really focusing on what's important. And I think that is also shown in the Duchess, where we have her focusing on what is important, which is being the Duchess of Devonshire, which is not just being a fashionista or a socialite, but also talking about politics. Thanks, Aaron. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about this. It's funny. I'm a white person who knows nothing about European history. I only know about Chinese history. It's a very weird position to be in. Next week when we talk about Euro, I'm going to drop all the knowledge bombs. You're going to be insane. It's going to be insane.
I am actually a history buff, but in the case of this, I'm sorry to say that I don't have the information on me. As hard as it is to believe, I did go into this just wanting to talk Keira. I know that's shocking, but
you, John, I went for the plot. By 2008, I was already the plot. Look at this.
I give you the plot.
2 plots right there. I give you the plot. No, 2008. Obviously Pirates had been out, and we actually talked about this on the Knights of Keira, our first stream together with Jared, where I first saw her in King Arthur, but and then we had Pirates. So I was already well into my Keira love when this movie came out, and I think that's a lot of the reason that I like this movie is because it really came for me at a time period where I realized how amazing of an actor she was, but I also realized how amazingly gorgeous she was. And she was a huge part of my bisexual awakening, and I have to give it to her. She will always be my number one. So Mila Kunis, you're number 2. I know you're watching, girl, but Keira Knightley's number 1.
If Keira's watching, we totally respect you as an actress first. Just want to throw that out.
Can you be a throuple with us? That's my next question. Please, Keira. We're both great people. We'll send in our resumes. Don't worry about it. Okay, really, her acting is first and foremost, but it helps that she's drop dead gorgeous. All right, if you're born good looking, it makes your life better and easier. I have heard. So great. She is blessed with great skill and also great beauty.
I will say that this was actually when I went to go see this movie, it was the first time I kind of really gave into the fact that, okay, so I'm a total Keira Knightley fanboy, because I was saying this last night. It's like with Pride and Prejudice, the whole story of me going to see that was the fact that I'm admitting that I'm a terrible son. I had forgotten my mom's birthday. So I had to make up for it by taking her to the movies to see a Jane Austen film.
John,
and then, I know. And the Pirates of the Caribbean movies were Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So of course I went to go see those. Then Atonement was up for all that Oscar buzz, and I was very much into awards then, so I would have gone to see it anyway. this was the movie where really I had no excuses, and I was like, yep, I'm going to see this because I'm in love with Keira.
And Anna actually has a really good point about the time period, which is that the fashion and the hairstyles change, and that actually shows the passage of time as well. Not just in this movie, but also kind of a lot of movies, period pieces that Keira's in. They really do show. And like you said earlier, John, with the feather, she was the trendsetter, right? So her outfit shows the passage of time because she's doing it first, right? And everyone else just, goes with it. And that, if you also notice, she has that little bit of a fake beauty mark there. And then if you notice, after that scene, she doesn't wear it again, but then you'll see her talking to women who wear that fake beauty mark. And someone who has actually a natural beauty mark, I've always found that hilarious because it was only a couple of years ago that I was okay with this kind of mark on my face. And there was a time in certain, places where the beauty mark was considered beautiful. I'll just show everyone. And so I always found it really awkward, and I thought that it was a flaw on my face, but there were different times in different cultures where that was considered beautiful. I mean, it's called beauty mark, right? But some kind of mark on your face. And I know and this is I apologize, but I'm interested in beauty marks. There's a Taiwanese actress in the 2000s, early 2000s, who was asked to remove her beauty mark for a certain part. And she said, I'm not doing it because people recognize me as the girl with the beauty mark on her chin. And so she kept it and became hugely famous. So it was also a way to have Keira stand out. She was the only one, Georgiana, having that. She was the fashion trendsetter. And then like John was saying, you look at later scenes and she's not wearing that or not that beauty mark or that certain hairstyle, that certain dress, but every girl at that party is, right? And it's so funny that they're so gossipy about her and everything. And a lot of it is like with the Duke, jealousy. They want to be her, but they aren't. And so, don't hate me because you ain't me is kind of kind of where it's going with this, right? They're not G and they want to be G, but they also, when they find it, I also got a sense from the movie, maybe you did too, John, that whenever the girls were gossiping after they had heard about the affair, when she was reentering, especially after the child, when she's like, oh, I'm going to leave randomly on holiday for 9 to 10 months. Do you what is also takes 9 to 10, almost a year? Yeah. Interesting. Maybe they made it a year to make it look less suspicious, but I think everyone knew what was going on. And the gossip that they had about her, they still respected her and revered her, but they almost seemed vindicated in the fact that she made what would be considered at the time a mistake, right? It was almost like they thought, oh, well, even she can't be perfect. And that really goes back to the spotlight that was on G throughout the whole movie and through, all the way up into her death. She was the Duchess and she was constantly looked at and jeered at and talked about. But in the end, anyone who was, everyone wanted to be her. And that was a lot of the reason that everyone was talking about her.
Yeah, since we were just talking about that hairstyle, though, I did want to mention one little behind the scenes tidbit, which I found hilarious, was the fact that that was not the most comfortable thing in the world for her to wear. So they actually had to construct a headrest for her so that in between takes, she had something to support.
Really? Wait, is that which headpiece is that? Is that
that's the really tall one.
Oh my God, it's so tall. Okay, I thought I wasn't sure if okay, that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, and if you also notice next to her, there's Bess at her hair is high, but it looks medium compared to G's hair, which is just huge. Yeah, that's so great. And then the women behind them you see have even lower hair than Bess, so it's like TNT. It's like the signals for your cell phone. It's like every other girl and then Bess, and then Georgiana's hair is way off the charts. It's crazy.
Apparently,
but yeah, it shows how she's a trendsetter, right?
But apparently the people on the production had taken to it. Whenever she would walk past, they'd say, "Timber."
It's so cute. I know, seriously, the head is I think almost as tall as her torso at that point. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm glad that they gave her a headrest though. Don't let her be uncomfortable for a scene. When she's not acting, she should be able to rest and prepare for the next scene. So that's good. It's so true. So much Marge Simpson with that. I feel that so hardcore. I love it. It also kind of reminds me of the guy in I'm gonna totally jump. It's a Nickelodeon show. Hey Arnold. He has a friend who has a really tall afro that's very, very tall. Kind of also reminds me of that. But that's great. I love it. Yeah, but Anna had a really good, in the chat, had a really good point about that, which is that she, the passage of time is not just through her having children or her, getting pregnant or some, historical thing. It's also the fashion, which is why I have to give another shout out to the costuming in this movie. It is so well thought out that it's almost it's almost like, why don't other movies think out the outfits as carefully as this movie? Because the Duchess really shows what you can do with costuming and how you can really show changes in mood, changes in season, changes in time, and really set the mood for it, especially when she wears white. Because in the very beginning, she's wearing white and it's kind of a sign of innocence. And then she's also wearing white when she gives up her daughter, which is, so it really says a lot about kind of, what she's going through and how, and goes back to her line when she told her husband, that women have hats and dresses to express themselves, right? And she, more than anyone in this movie, uses that to her advantage. And this dress right here, where she's giving up Eliza, shows this similar kind of innocence and good, and goodness that G really has in her heart. And the way that she treats her children, more than anything, look at the way that people treat dogs and animals, dogs and animals, dogs or animals, animals and children, right? And she treats the children so well. And I think that really, it's an interesting that they throw them back to that. And and there she is again. And that scene is from when she was reunited with her children after being not allowed to see them for a long time. And notice the Duke kind of touches her from behind and she's totally focusing on the children. Like she's doing this for them and no one else. And that is, I think, what makes Georgiana a good person.
I just want to take a moment also to talk about something about this scene. I made a comment last night when we were watching it to really highlight the music of this film, which was composed by Rachel Portman, which I have to say, she's one of the more famous female composers, and I really like that she did the music for this film. Not least because she's just an amazing composer. Her signature style is very lush orchestral scores, very romantic.
Yes.
And
definitely.
And just the way this piece in particular builds up to just like it starts off very soft as she's reading the letters, and then it builds and it builds, and then it unleashes, her full theme as she goes running back into the house and after her children. It's really beautiful and probably, I haven't talked about it before, but it really does add a lot of emotion to the film, and especially in that opening scene as well. I'll pop this back up.
Oh, I was just about to say, don't forget the violins and the wedding dress scene. That's my and in case anyone doesn't know, which I always brag about, I am a violinist and I'm classically trained, and this is one of the tightest orchestral scores out there, especially for a period piece. Like you were saying about the one where she gets, is reunited with her children, but this wedding dress scene, every single time the wedding scene, I always, I made a note this time and I made a note last time when we were doing our Keira stream, which is the violins in this. And, of course, I love the cello, bass, and viola. This is not to say that they're not great, but I play the violin. It's the best instrument ever invented. And I will die on this hill. And this was some of the best violin score that I have heard in movies, and it's just beautiful. And it really, like you were saying, John, it so builds up. And in this scene, as she walks down the aisle, the violins become more and more flourishing, and it's a really great buildup. And the violins also, and the classical nature of it, like you were saying, it was more of like a classical period type of music, which is how most violinists are trained. They're trained through the Baroque and classical pieces, and it gives a huge nod to the 16, 17, and 1800s, which were the height of classical pieces. And it also gives a nod to the drama and the buildup. In this case, she's going to marry this guy and then become his wife and have children with him. That's huge. And then the other buildup where she's reunited with her children, the buildup is that she's going to now have this kind of stage of life that is different, but still kind of similar. And I think that the violins really usher her through each scene as she walks and as she does her facial expressions and, you know, and delivers her lines. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, the way I just have to say, everything about this scene I really love, because it's the way the violins work with as each step she's taking, and it just works in synchronization with the visuals so beautifully. And then the piece resolves as she stands next to the Duke and they both look forward, and then the title card appears right along the bottom. It's absolutely wonderful, and you know, it's got its own unique take on doing the title, and as opposed to a lot of times what we see is the title card just, you know, against like a black screen or something like that. I really liked
you are totally right.
The way they did it here. And also I want to comment on the lighting in this scene too, as she's walking, where
yes, definitely
the way it shades different parts of her face as she's walking, you know, with the candles and everything. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It really is.
And, you know, John, I had a bit of a revelation here. Some of this is probably because I'm a little tipsy, but you made this interesting comment about the title card, right? So you don't get the Duchess until after she walks up to the altar. And that is when she becomes the Duchess. You know, she becomes his husband. And that's when her life changes forever. And I think that is, like you were saying, John, like that is a really brilliant use of a title card. Normally it's just like, here are the production companies, and then they might show one scene and then show the Duchess or whatever. But they showed 2 scenes and then the Duchess. They were very careful in particular about how they used this title card. And I think I kind of noticed it, but I don't think until you said something, I really realized how profound that was, because it showed her loss of innocence, her transition into womanhood, whatever that means. And it was just really, it's this movie, I think, is one of the most well thought out movies that I have seen. And that's one of the reasons that it's pretty much in my top 10, 15 favorite movies of all time. So. Yeah.
It's no surprise that I'm going to say that I think the film is severely underappreciated, fully aware of my bias. But all the same, I think there is a tendency to be dismissive of period dramas in general, especially, you know, ones that that are primarily focused on a female protagonist, and especially ones that don't make a big splash with the awards. They tend to get brushed aside, but I think this is a really good one. And there's a reason why I'm still talking about it now, even, you know, it's been 12 years since the movie came out. So it's really very good.
I discover something new every time I watch it again too. A subtle line or a subtle facial expression. You know, this is, you know, one of those movies that it doesn't just deserve a rewatch, it absolutely demands it. Kind of like we talked about that on our stream about Little Women. It demands a rewatch. Like, you just have to watch it again. There's so much going on and there's so much subtlety that's another reason I like The Duchess, is you learn something new every time. You feel a little bit different about one scene or one character every time, at least for me personally. That's how I feel. And I really feel like watching, the more you watch it, the more you appreciate every character, except for the Duke, who can go, you know, screw himself, but that's just me.
Which actually, it's funny that he's a character who, for me, it just seems to have gotten worse every time I've watched the film. So,
yeah, no, he was bad every time I watched it, but there were a couple of times where I was like, well, you know, maybe he's just having a hard time. But no, I'm totally # team screw the Duke, like whatever. He's not a great guy. But you know, I think Bess and also Charles Gray grew on me through rewatches. I love Micah. Micah, like, telling off the Duke has been my favorite thing about the stream and about the watch party. It's just Micah, so good.
You have been a superstar this whole time. It's great.
It's so good. Killing it. No, seriously though, the Duke is, you know, I mean, he's the main reason for all of her unhappiness. So, you know, if there was ever a time where you can blame someone for the complete unhappiness of another person, it is this movie. You know, like I'm someone who always talks about gray area, and when you're in abusive relationships, maybe the other person also makes mistakes. But no, in this case, one is just really a terrible person. there's really not much gray area with the Duke, except the one asterisk, he likes dogs. That's all I got. But as you said earlier, a lot of people in the chat, lots of terrible people like dogs. I get that. I just also happen to love dogs. So I think that there's a little bit of a virtue there, but he is a terrible person. And he also, I think more than anything, knows he has the power and is not afraid to use it and does not feel bad about using it. I think in the end, that's why the Duke is a bad person, is that he doesn't like have this, it's like a knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to use my power, right? He uses it strategically and with malicious intent.
And I think the thing that, to me, the reason why I actually think I've had a lower opinion of him each time I've watched the film is because when you really think about it, the moments that he shows a hint of self-awareness, that just shows that he's not making the effort to better himself, to make
exactly
to try and be genuinely kinder and not just put up a show of it, but to actually be better. It shows that he's just not willing to make that step, and that just does not endear me as an audience member to him, no matter how brilliant Ralph Fiennes is, and he is. I don't know what that man does to make us to be able to make us hate his characters so much, but he is brilliant at it.
And I think that he only cares for himself and his dogs. My mom is a psychologist, but I'm not. But I can say he's absolutely a narcissist, and to the point of a malignant narcissist. He only cares for himself. He doesn't see the consequences of his actions. He sees other people as life is a game, and he's just playing the game, and we're all playing. There are no true emotions. Love isn't really real. It's just a concept that society's created. That all is coming from the Duke. And so, as someone who lived with a narcissist, the Duke, a lot of the things he says, and when we'll talk about Colette, a lot of the things that her husband says really reminds me of my narcissistic ex, and that it's all about him, and anything that went wrong, it was always your fault. And the deflection, right, that he does, what the Duke does, where she's giving a legitimate thing, like, hey, maybe don't sleep with my friend. He deflects that and goes, you haven't given me a son, right? This gives me a little bit of PTSD. I love this movie, but there are a couple of scenes that do kind of throw me back a little bit with this idea.
And what really makes it, what he says in that scene would be the absolute worst, no matter what. But the fact that it follows on a moment when it looks like he's actually trying to reach out to her, and maybe he feels some kind of like he's recognizing that what he did was wrong, and he wants to try and almost comfort her in that moment. And then he steps back and says what he says, just makes it a million times worse. Because it's like, no, you were kind of semi on the right path a second ago, and now you've just decided to go in the complete other direction.
You're right, knowing the difference between right or wrong and deciding to do wrong and not caring about it. We have in the criminal justice system, you have, if you not guilty by reason of insanity, which is very rare that actually gets, it happens. But the main argument is at the time of the crime, they didn't know the difference between right and wrong. The Duke absolutely knows the difference between right and wrong when he says and does everything he says. And he chooses either not to care or just not to put in the effort. And I think, and Micah's saying this similar thing in the chat, and you've also been saying, John, that makes him worse, right? Because he knows that he's like, and that's very common for narcissists. I've had experience saying, well, I'm just a butthole, or I didn't want to use the A word, so I went with butthole, just PG-13 it a little bit. But I'm just a bad person. So get over it. Keep dating me or whatever. But I'm a bad person. I'm not going to change. And that's basically what the Duke is doing, which is a very classic narcissistic tactic, which is, well, maybe there's something wrong with you because you're with me. Although in the case of the Duke and the Duchess, it was an arranged marriage. So not the same thing. But I do think he kind of puts this the onus on her a little bit of well, you should be doing your part, whereas as she was saying, she expected one thing. She gave up with she put up with all the affairs. The one thing she expected was just, don't sleep with my best friend, right? And it was almost, that's what made it more tempting. And I also think, going back to this idea of the Duke being jealous of the Duchess, he wanted to take away something that made her feel happy and confident because he wanted to tear her down. And that's in the end what narcissists want to do to their partners. And I'm sorry, I'm just like going on a rant about narcissism. This is my personal experience. They want you to tear you down so that they feel better about themselves. And I think that's what the Duke was doing. A lot of those scenes where he was really making her feel bad about herself was so that he could feel less inadequate, when I think the whole movie is about him being inadequate and about the Duchess being very, very talented.
Yeah, you see that especially in the scene where she's introduced and she has, the big hair and everything, and she's giving, that very that speech. I love that scene because it shows that she really is in her element in that moment. But if you watch the Duke, he's off to the side and he could not be grumpier. He's just looking at her with this acknowledgement that she is good at the thing that he should be good at, but that he doesn't care one bit about, but she's getting all this love and attention for it. And so I think that there is a very strong element of jealousy in that.
And it's because she's living up to something he couldn't, right? The patriarchal, expectations are that he's good at politics, that he's a good Duke, and he doesn't live up to that, but then a woman does. Like, there's a lot of gendered kind of resentment going on in this kind of jealousy.
Which is bullshit, because he should love her.
Snap!
All the
I
more.
got J-Dubs to say the S word. You're welcome, Dragon fam.
Because it's like she's actually helping him by doing that. If he's not good at that and she's great at it, he should be appreciative of the fact
use
that
her strengths to help your weaknesses and vice versa. That's supposedly what marriage could and should be about, is that you put together, even the good or the bad about each person, you put it together and you make it work. And instead he just was, I think, unrelenting is maybe a good word. Like, she was yielding and he was unrelenting the whole movie. He would not compromise at all. And she was the one who had to do it. it's the OJ's kicking in. I can tell. Look, his cheeks are getting a little red. I know that the OJ is starting to But it is bullshit, John. It really is. Like, this is why my feminist rage is so strong all the time, because I and you and lots of other people in the chat who are feminists see this so clearly, right? And it's so infuriating when we're watching a movie and this has all happened. It's all in the past and everything. And I just want to go and save G. And I want to be like, you know what? You come with me, we'll hang out, girl. Or you know what? You and Bess can be gay lovers. Like, anything but this. Well, everything is just terrible. And it's the rage that we feel as contemporary viewers, I think, is a lot of the point of the movie, right? Like with a lot of movies that Keira is in, it's about being angry about the past, and not just being angry about the past, but wanting to be productive for the present and the future, right? Wanting to better the status of women and, the status of, especially with Colette, the status of people who are LGBTQIA+. And so I think that a lot of this movie, even though it came out in 2008, which, was a more progressive time, but it was before, I believe, 2014, when gay marriage was finally allowed in America. Well, I mean,
we think of it looking back as that because that's the beginning of the Obama era, but let's not forget that we were also coming off of 8 years of George Bush. And so we were just coming out of this ultra conservative era. Never mind.
And and if we want to go a little bit further back to the 90s, I believe it was 93 where Hillary Clinton said human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights, and that was like a revelation to people or something. It's just we have come a certain, everyone always says we've come a long way, and I hate that sentence. So we have progressed. I will not argue that, but I think that this movie and a lot of other movies, and currently what's happening, like, I hate to get too much into stuff, but like with Epstein, abusing young girls, with the whole Me Too movement and everything, we realize that coming a long way or progressing a little bit is not enough. And I think that a lot of the movies that Keira is in, including The Duchess, are about that, which is to show, like, look how we've hurt people, men, women, and otherwise, and yet we kept doing it because that's just the way things were,
Yeah, I will say that
that's why it's my favorite, Stephen. It's so much patriarchy.
it's interesting because what I was just saying, this came out in 2008, which was a long time away from the Me Too movement, which is why I think as a viewer watching this back then, maybe I wasn't as aware of certain things as I am now. So I very much viewed it through a different lens versus the past couple of years when I've watched it. I'd like to think that my eyes have been opened quite a bit to a lot of stuff, and which has kind of aided, how I perceive this film. But speaking of that, this isn't just a movie about the past. It is kind of showing the past, but it's giving us something to sort of, it's teaching us lessons to carry into the future. And especially talking about Colette, that's a big one for that, because that's set in the past, but that's very much about the future too. And it was so fortuitous that film came out right as the Me Too movement was heating up. And it wasn't even intended. They were making that movie before all that stuff happened. So it just goes to show that sometimes things like that are meant to be. Like, that was a great movie to be coming out when we were having that conversation, and we're still obviously having that. And so I think that's a great one as well to learn lessons from. And I see Colette especially as sort of a rallying cry movie, which is why I really wish more people would see it.
Colette is a call to arms, and it's for a queer cause, and for feminist causes, and for civil rights causes, and also I also just wanted to say, you were talking about how you viewed the movie, any movie really, pre and post Me Too movement. And I don't want to get too personal, but I have been Me Too'd. I have been sexually assaulted, and I think I saw The Duchess before that, and then when I watched The Duchess after that, I really related differently to the sexual assault scene. Obviously, I felt more for the character, but I also felt more about the just utter anger that I had toward everyone just pretending like it wasn't a thing because they were married, And in my case, I was in a relationship, so not exactly the same thing, but a lot of people see it as, well, he's your boyfriend, so he can just take it whenever he wants, and that's just it. The Me Too movement was good in many ways. And I think for me, it also helped me, the way that I watched movies after the Me Too movement, I think also changed. And these movies that were made before, 2016, 2017, I think can still bring us a lot of great revelations using this new feminist post Me Too movement lens that we have now at our disposal. And you can go ahead and take off that lens and just watch a movie or whatever and just try to enjoy it for its value. But the movies like The Duchess are really not meant to be watched that way. I'm not saying anyone's watching the movie wrong. I'm just saying that The Duchess is meant to make you think about these themes. And I think that it does that so effectively. And for it to have been done in 2008 versus now, it's very, very impressive.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been doing this for a good 2.5 hours. Are there any final thoughts on the movie that you want to get out there?
I don't have any final thoughts, but I do want to shout out everyone in the chat because I love you all. So if I just do super quickly, Mike, I'm a man. I love you. Kate, you're my queen. Flores, thank you so much for coming. Leaf, you're my lady. You know it. And Jolie, you may have fallen asleep. You're my big sis, and I love you, and I get it because you're in the Netherlands. Steven, of course, you're Daddy Dragon. We all love you. Erin, my girl, thanks for coming. All of you, I love all of you. I'm sorry if I left anyone out, but thank you so much for being in the live chat and for, supporting me with the Patriarchy drinking game because it's kind of my thing. And I'm so glad that the Here Be Dragons John Webster film and Unspun Yarn crew have accepted it as a given that we must drink whenever I or anyone says patriarchy. So thank you so much. I love you all.
Yeah, thank you
also,
guys.
Sorry, final thing. Plug my stuff. Yep. Do all the blog. Do all my YouTube channel and my Twitter. I create content. Please listen to / read it, and that's all I ask.
Yeah, it's some absolutely incredible stuff. So I'm ordering you guys to check it out. That's anybody who is watching this who hasn't already done so. I know, of course, a lot of you have. But it's great stuff.
And Danny, I'm sorry, Danny McKay. Danny McKay was in this chat earlier. I'm so sorry, buddy. He was driving, so he didn't chat that much. But Danny, you're great. I love you, man. Sorry about that.
And I want to say also do go back and check out our earlier streams. Definitely our big epic Keira stream where we talk with Jared about a lot more of her films. And, you know, the idea with that is I like to think of that stream as like the Silmarillion of, you know, our Keira stuff where it's like little, you know, shorter installments compiled into one stream, and then we're just going to gradually expand them out. And also, please do, you know, speaking of like patriarchy and all that stuff, check out our Little Women stream, which we did with Bronte, which was a great discussion. And that's a movie that really, even more so than the novel, kind of really takes on you know, the position that women were put in, and the way Greta did that film, especially with the ending and stuff. I love how it really gives triumph to to that character. But this isn't the Little Women stream. If you want to hear us talk about that, go. But
I highly recommend the Little Women stream though, because it's me and you, John, and other John Bronsteries blew my mind in that stream. Both of you guys had just amazing commentary, and I think we really dug into a lot of great issues. And yeah, I was glad to have on, obviously, to talk about Little Women. You should have had a Little Woman on there to talk about it. So,
yep, and and yeah.
Okay, is Jared real? This has been such a discussion in our fam, and I just think he enjoys season 8 of Game of Thrones and Keira Knightley. I think you are him, and he is you.
Well, I mean, are you saying that the reason why he's not here is because I'm low on money and I couldn't afford to pay the actor playing Jared?
I mean, we don't know about your financial system, J-Dubs, and we don't know how much Jared charges. Maybe he's a really, he's really cheap and you found him on Craigslist or whatever. But, we've never seen John and Jared in the same room. And, if you hired an actor, I don't know about that because, I don't know. This is a thing. Is Jared real? And we always do Jared with quotes. And I feel bad for Jared because he's like, guys, I'm real. It's like, nah. Jared, the doctor who has to work a lot.
Well, that just means that you guys have to go. That just means that all you guys have to go back and watch our Pride and Prejudice review and our Keira stream so that you can examine beat by beat and see if you think he's real or not. Okay.
It seems genuine. I allegedly have his phone number and we text and he's a separate person. So we'll see.
Yeah, this is true. I don't know how I would run out of money.
This stream sponsored by Orange Juice, Florida natural orange juice.
I finished it up. I can't believe that lasted me.
Me too. Cheers. Yeah, I'm about to finish this too. Cheers, everyone in the chat. I love you all.
Okay. Also, just a reminder that next week, same day and time, we're going to be doing the hero stream, and the two of us will be joined by my brother Stephen Stark, and we're going to have a blast talking about that. There's a clip from the film in the description. I didn't throw the trailer in there because A, it's not very good, and B, it spoils the whole film. So just be content with watching a really cool clip that showcases the choreography and the beautiful music by Tandoon. That's a great score too. I will be going on and on and on about it. And don't forget to tune in to Here Be Music Score discussion. Don't forget to tune in to Here Be Dragons tomorrow. Stephen, Nessie, and Stephen's mom and I will be talking about season 2 of The Umbrella Academy.
Yes, okay. I'm so excited. I love that show so much. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. You're so wonderful.
And thank you for coming on, Amy. This was great. You did not disappoint.
Thank you so much for having me again, John. I apologize for everyone. I rant and talk really fast. But, John, he really brings that out of me when we talk about Keira. So what can I do? But all my stuff, once again, down in the description. Follow me, subscribe, like, all the things. And John, subscribe to John's channel. He is almost to 100. This needs to happen. Get off your lazy butt. Click that subscribe. Come on, people. What are you doing with your life?
Yeah,
this is my disappoint face. You want me to give you the disappoint face? Subscribe to his channel.
Okay, so I think that about wraps stuff up. Nothing else to say except Keira, if you're watching, please marry me. Yeah, that's
Call
it.
me.
Okay. All right. Have a great night, guys, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.